Welcome to the Theory of DFS podcast. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender HD. You can follow me there on Twitter. The co-author of the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, 15-hour audio DFS masterclass at theoryofdfs.com. Joining me this week as Eric Beimfor still has more football, best ball drafts to. He has to get on drafters. He has to get on everything. He'll eventually. He'll be back, I think, after the first week of NFL. But to join me, you may hear him on and see him on Awesome-O shows, the strategy shows, the live before locks, the deeper dives, the whatever, as well as playing 150 lineups in your contests. It's Adam Scherer. ShipMyMoney DFS. I saw your tweet yesterday. It's a very humbling thing figuring out when to update your rotor tracker.
Yeah, it is. It's it's easy to do after you win, but then you get the losses right after it, and it's just like, okay, well, do I just go a month and not update this, or eventually you just kind of have to bite the bullet.
So you don't have like a set period or anything. Like I tend to try to update it like 2 or 3 weeks.
So when I'm playing cash games consistently, because I kind of bounce around, especially over the last year or so with what I've been playing. When I play cash games consistently, I update it, every couple weeks or so, because it's just like, more consistent results. When I play tournaments, though, I typically just like don't look at it, and then I'll win a tournament and I'll update it and be like, oh, okay, like everything looks good. I'll update it. Normally, I update it either when I win a tournament because I know it'll look good, or if like I'm in a prolonged losing streak and I want to know if I'm playing really poorly or just losing. When I start to question that, normally I'll update it. But if it's just like, yeah, I know that, I'm getting like 15th place every night and just not getting first, I typically just say, yeah, I'll wait until I win one and then I'll update it.
Right. The main problem about updating RotoTracker is getting your CSV from DraftKings.
Yeah. You have to, click the refresh button like 100 times and then you finally get it once.
Right. To me, that's the main thing, that if it wasn't for that, I'd probably update it every day.
Yeah, it's like, in my opinion, one of the only things that I like about FanDuel more than DraftKings is you just click a button on RotoTracker and it'll pull it all from FanDuel for you. Whereas DraftKings, you have to sit there and mess around with it for 5 minutes.
Right. You click the history, and then it times out, and then you go, okay, let me click it again, and then it times out, and then you click it. It's like, come on, what's so complex? Are they not prepared for people that have CSVs that have like 7 million rows in them?
Right, yeah. I just end up clicking it like 15 times at once, and then eventually maybe one will work.
But you're right. Like the main reason that I look at RotoTracker is am I getting unlucky or am I playing bad? I mean, to me, that's like, yeah, updating when you win. Like, yeah, looking at your nice graph and go, look, it's higher than it was before. Like, doesn't really do anything for you. I think it's more.
Right, yeah, like.
I think it's more important even after you win to go, did I get lucky? And I wasn't.
Right, exactly. And to me, like, that's the hardest thing in DFS too, especially I think for anyone that has any sort of poker background. At least in poker, you can go back, if you're losing or winning, you can go back and you'll look at specific hands and do the math and just really say, like, okay, I played this poorly, but I got lucky, or I played this really well and I got unlucky. It's so hard with DFS in general to be like, am I really any good? Like, was I ever good? Did I get lucky over a stretch and I've been bad this whole time? Like, the one little thing you can do is, use RotoTracker or something similar and be like, yeah, okay, 1.5% of my lineups are finishing in the top 1%. I'm probably just not getting lucky enough.
Right. Or like you said, you see yourself like every other night coming in 8th or 12th, right? You get the snake knives and you're like,
right.
You're like, well, I mean, at some point I'm going to get 7 extra points, and this is going to turn into like actual money. But it's just not working out.
Meanwhile, you're losing 50% of your entries every night, even if you're finishing, 8th or 9th.
Right. People don't realize that. Right. Like to me, that's the thing that people really don't get, and that's the main reason that like I don't play 150 lineups, because when you play 150 lineups, and if you're significantly wrong, like minus 70% nights is not. I mean, that's common, but I mean, minus 40% nights would be like another day at the office. But when you play like 90 lineups and you condense it to like only the lineups that kind of, you're not just throwing in a pirate stack because why not have pirates exposure? Like, you're like, okay, when a losing night maybe is minus 18%, it's like I could deal with that. But I mean, to me, that's the balance. I know Chess is okay on Twitter. He doesn't tweet that often. Replied to one of my things like maybe a week ago about like not playing 150 lineups. The other attitude is, if you have that edge, wouldn't you want to compound it into 150 lineups? But the thing that people don't talk about, like, diversification is not a strategy. It's a way to, it's a risk tolerance preference. And I believe, from obviously talking to a lot of sharp players and talking to 150 maxers, talking to people like you, Adam, like, I'm very conservative risk tolerance, so I have no problem giving up that to have a graph that doesn't have like fucking it's all over the place. And I see these graphs from some sharp people, and the graphs, they make more money than me, but their graphs, like, I'm like, I would get I see that slope, and it's like, dude, at some point during that slope, I'd be considering getting a full-time job.
Yeah, that's kind of the balance for me. And I think for anyone who has had success at DFS but isn't, like, rich, I think we kind of run into similar issues where, I know I'm going to make more money over the course of a year if I'm playing 150 lineups in these contests, but you also run into the issue of, like, I still can go broke. Like, I have the money, but it's not, I don't have, like, an unlimited supply of money. And it kind of, like, I did a podcast with Dean during the COVID lockdowns, and I said that I had kind of at that time I was playing a lot more 3 max and had kind of gotten away from 150 max because I'd kind of just gotten to the point where it was just like, I have plenty of money for like the lifestyle that I live and all of that. It makes a lot more sense to me at this point just to like make some more money on top of this than to risk just losing everything that I've built up. So like that's kind of what I go back and forth with during the downswings. It's just like, I know I'm going to get out of it eventually and I'm going to make more money, but also there's like a non-zero chance that I just like completely screw myself because I stick with this and the downswing goes longer than I would like.
The way that you react to downswings like that, by like maybe play single entry 3 max, which has less variance, or cash games. I mean, there's one thing that you started playing that I never thought you would ever play, like double ups and head to heads. To some people react that way. I think the worst thing to do is to not react at all. Especially if you're not sure you have an edge. I mean, we see this all the time. I mean, I've been playing DFS for 6 years. I think you've been playing for longer. People go on a hot streak and then they push it, and they don't realize that like they just got on the right side of variance. They actually were playing worse. Maybe not playing badly, but they're not playing they're playing so much percentage of your bankroll now in comparison to the smallest amount of edge that next thing you know, you actually lost all you won $200,000, and by the end of the year you're actually down. And since you're not playing well to begin with, like you should have taken the money and run at that point.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like human nature. Whenever you're winning, especially if you go on an actual hot streak where like you win a couple tournaments over the course of a week or something, you're gonna think you're better than you are. I think that's kind of just normal. But yeah, trying to at least like be real with yourself and look at your results and understand that you probably didn't go from being like an average player to the best player in the world over the course of a week or something. You're probably just running really good. And I think it's one thing, especially if you have a big week, I don't mind taking some shots. Like I started playing higher stakes after my recent hot streak, and that did in part also play into why my losing streak's been so bad. But like I'm okay with doing that because I know that I'll get myself out of it too. Like it's kind of I'm okay with doing that. I don't need the money right now. I'm better off. It's worth the risk to me. But I think when you have people that aren't as experienced and aren't going to pull themselves out of it, and they're at more of a risk of just losing all of their money chasing higher stakes and stuff, is when you really get in trouble.
Well, I also think that it's very similar to poker. People get used to the stakes that they play and the games that they play. So, I mean, what you see, the mistake that people make is that, and I made it very early. I made it very early in playing DFS also. Like when I was playing the quarter and dollar soccer contest in 2015, got some satellite tickets into the main $20 ones, did well on one day, got like $2,400, and was like, well, now that I'm used to playing the $20 contest, I'm not going to play max. I'm handling 5 lineups. I'm playing $100 a slate versus playing $30 a slate. And then over the course of a month, like just lose. And it's like that $2,400 just went back down to $800. And I'm like, oh, what should I be doing here at 800? No, I should be going back to the quarter and the dollar contests and then working my way up, very similar to poker, where like I was a big limit hold'em player. So it's like, yeah, you play the 6-12 games. Once you beat the 6-12 games, then you move up to 10-20 or 15-30. But then you go on a run, maybe you win a tournament, you play some no limit, and now he's like, oh, now I'm going to play 8160. It's like, what? Like, why? Like, why are you doing that? And maybe you do have the bankroll for 8160, but let's say you go on a losing streak in there. Like, the best thing for you to do is drop down. But in poker, Adam, I don't know if you played live poker, especially at a card room or...
Yeah, I mean, I played, but not...
But not like as a living type of thing.
Yeah.
Some people in poker, and maybe it exists in DFS because it's kind of public, that you play at a certain level, and then when people like I think a good example is Sahil. I think like he was playing everything back in 2015, 2016, and now like I see him in soccer, in the soccer lobby. I see him once in a while, and he's playing, one entry into the 555 or something like that. But it's a noticeable thing of like, oh, this person went on a very big downswing, and now like the public, you almost feel like I have to play these contests. Like, oh, I'm known as the guy that tries to qualify for live finals. So like, if they don't see me in live final qualifiers, they can think worse of me. Even if you're not like doing content, it's just a public, like, I don't want people to think I'm a bad player. And if they don't see me in contests, instead of just going, what's the best financially for me in the long run? And who cares what anyone else thinks?
Yeah, I think that's difficult. And I think it's probably most difficult, like you said, for people that are known for having a live final presence and for people that play the highest stakes. Because, like, for me, I can stop 150 maxing the $18 on DraftKings, and nobody's going to notice because there's 10,000 people in that tournament, and, who cares?
I'll notice. I'll notice.
Yeah. If I'm playing, the Thunderdome every day for 2 months straight, and then I just stop playing it, it's going to be noticeable because there's like 8 people in the tournament or whatever. And the same for live finals. If you're someone that basically says, this is what I go for, I'm going to make live finals in every sport, whatever, and then you just stop qualifying for them, people notice that too. So I think those are the two where it probably stands out the most. And it's not just dealing with your ego with yourself, but, people are going to notice that you're moving down in stakes, and there's really only one reason people do that.
Well, sometimes that's where the easiest money is.
Well, right, yeah. But the thing is too with DFS though, like in poker, there's at least an opportunity cost. It's like, okay, well, I can beat high stakes, but I'm going to win at a better rate moving down a little bit. There's no opportunity cost in DFS. You just play it all.
Yeah, like but the contest will change.
But like if you're winning at high stakes DFS, you're not going to stop doing that just so that you can like play lower stakes and win at a higher rate. You're just going to play both and adjust your lineups appropriately.
Well, I mean, but like I said, I think it depends on the contests that are offered. So for instance, if you're the type of person like this NFL season coming into it, I may be playing more of the smaller field, the $400 juke. Like I always played this power sweep and the spy, and then I would play like the slant.
Best tournaments there.
Right. To me, the slant is the best large field contest they offer during NFL. I don't mind playing 100 lineups into that. And not even bother playing the Millie Maker. Just
2x min cash. Yeah, I typically forego the Millie. There was a stretch last NFL season, I think, where I'd stopped max entering, and I might have just been playing cash and 3 max, except for I was 150 maxing the slant, because the 2x min cash is just such a big deal. I think people always talk about, you're just, you're play for first. It doesn't matter, first or last in GPPs. It's like, no, if you're playing 100, especially if you're playing 150 lineups in these, the min cash really does matter as far as sustainability.
Right, for sustainability, not necessarily for like your ceiling.
Right,
just more of the fact of you're not losing 50% of your entries every week when you don't have a top 10 lineup.
Yeah, just for the chances that I'm still able to play in week 17.
Right, but in those cases, since they changed their offerings week to week, day to day in baseball, to me, there's a big difference in MLB that the super knuckleball and the bat flip. Like the 18, sure, yeah. Right, like the $5 super knuckleball with 100,000 a first and 7th place of steak knives. Right. And then you have the bat flip. Sometimes the bat flip on like off days when there's an NFL game or something, it's only 7,000 entries, $18, and they make 25 that then it's 50,000 a first and 10,000 a second. I'm like, I don't like that.
Right.
But sometimes the payout structure, it all matches up, the field size and the payout structure, where it's like, oh, today's the day. Instead of me playing let's say I was playing the 777 or something. I don't play the 777 and use that $777 into something else. So what I'm saying is like when you talk about the Thunderdome, that's a very high stakes. But I'm talking about like high enough stakes where, okay, normally I play an entry into the 121. I play the entry into the 2 entries into the 250 ball 4. But now they're running this large field contest where I would normally put in 80 entries. But since the structure is good and also probably going to attract a little bit more casuals with an $8 entry fee than an $18 entry fee, I'm just going to forego one of my entries up or forego one of the contests at the higher stakes. So I play the same amount of volume percentage-wise, and I just put it into that contest.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree with that completely. Yeah, when I use the Thunderdome example, I was just saying like if you're someone that consistently plays that and then you just stop, it's probably because you're getting your ass kicked and you're not.
Yeah, but who cares?
You're not winning.
But who cares? So what? So Wilson can make fun of you on Twitter or something? I mean, who cares?
Yeah, I mean that's. I think it's probably harder. Like, and I don't play that tournament, but like if I did, I think it would be harder for me to drop down in stakes during a downswing because it would just be so noticeable. Whereas for me now, nobody really knows what I'm playing unless, like you said, unless you're just digging back through like to see what people are doing in certain tournaments. Nobody knows what I'm playing. Like if I disappear,
what does the noticeability have to do with you? I mean, like, is there any advantage that anyone has by noticing that?
No, but you had brought up like the people noticing like if you're in a downswing like with Sahil and you move down in stakes, it's like you feel like people are going to think less of you.
Right, but my point is that you shouldn't care.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's the point. It's like it really shouldn't matter. People fall into that ego trap.
Yeah. I was just saying that I think like the stakes I play, I don't really have to deal with that because nobody's going to notice I'm not in a specific tournament.
Yeah, but
I would think it's probably it's probably harder for the guys to play like high stakes where it's going to stand out.
You don't think people would notice that you're not 150 maxing? I mean, I did. So. I mean, I did.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people would, but I don't think it's that noticeable
for the normal person, for the average person. That is, the average person once the slate's over, they don't even care about the slate before.
Right, exactly. Like, I'll say I've bounced back and forth between 150 maxing and not 150 maxing like pretty frequently over the last couple of years, just kind of depending on how things are going. But yeah, in general, like I don't think people really notice it. Like, when my interactions on Twitter don't change, people still think, oh yeah, Adam 150 maxing every tournament. I'm just like, yeah, no, I've been playing cash for a month.
Why did you start doing that? Because I remember from a while ago, you like, cash games were like, why bother playing cash games?
Yeah, it was kind of just, I don't remember why. I don't remember what made me start or what sport it even was, but I kind of just realized that I think they're a little bit more beatable, especially in some sports, than I had given them credit for. And so I was like, okay, I can make relatively consistent money just playing like my best lineup across, cash games, and I was throwing it into, single entry tournaments and stuff like that too. And mentally, it's just so much better. Like that was the big thing for me. I didn't realize, because I think I generally handle downswings pretty well. Like I'm able to make fun of myself. I don't take it too seriously, and I understand I'm going to get out of it. But I didn't really realize how much of a toll like 150 maxing takes on me mentally sometimes, because even when you have a sweat, like your night will end up okay, but you still feel like you lost. And I think for me specifically, I still fall into that trap of like, I deserve to win. And if I don't win, like I got unlucky kind of thing, even though it's stupid, like that's how it feels. And so that's something that I noticed just was sort of wearing on me. And then once I switched to cash, and it was just like, okay, I don't even have to care about like 80% of the things that are happening tonight. I just have to care about my players and like the 2 or 3 guys that I don't have that other people do. And other than that, like I don't have to sweat anything. I don't have to care. And I'm going to win at a much higher rate than I did in tournaments. That made a really big difference for me, both in terms of just mentally. And I really liked the aspect of being able to like consistently withdraw money and invest in other things. At the time, I think I was still pretty big into like Top Shot, for example, and that was something where playing 100% tournaments, I think it's a lot more difficult because you always have that like impending downswing behind you. It's like, oh, I just won 100K, but I better keep most of that around because I'm probably going to lose 70K over the next couple of months at some point.
Yeah, but do you notice that by playing a hybrid of cash games with tournaments, that your downswings are much less severe? Like, yeah, like even if your ROI in cash games is in total 7%, 5%, just that, like, if you, for instance, like during basketball, like I would play like 4,000 in cash and 1,000 in GPP. And it's like my expected return on the 4,000 on multiple sites, obviously, not just on one site.
Right.
I'm playing on Yahoo, I'm playing on FanDuel. That there are many days that like I would lose all my GPP entries, but I would double up everything and everything else. And then I was some days that, because a lot of times the GPP lineups you're playing are the complete opposite of kind of like what you're doing in cash.
Right.
So like even on the days where in cash you're not going to lose all 4,000. You're still going to win like 40% of your head-to-heads. So like it's not really you're risking 4,000, but if you look at that graph, even if you're winning 7% over time in cash, like those downswings in GPPs just aren't as sharp down. They're just a little bit more softer.
Yeah, like, and I think that's probably the best approach for it. I've never been that good at doing that. Like, granted, I haven't done it a ton. Normally, I just play one or the other. But I always feel like when I do both, I just end up making like kind of a not great cash lineup, and then my tournament lineups, or whatever, they're going to lose most of the time anyway. But I don't know. I catch myself making mistakes in cash a lot where it's just like, I don't know if it's because I'm rushing or just, not thinking as deeply about the one lineup I'm playing. But it's like, I'll make a lineup and it's like, oh, I think this is a good lineup, and I'll play it. And then I'll start looking at the people I'm playing against, and I'm just like, oh man, like they definitely got me on this, 2-person swap or 3-person swap. Like, I think they have the better side of it. I feel like I make mistakes when I try and play both instead of just focusing on one, which is something I probably should and could get better at, but I just haven't.
But you know what I do? I eliminate the cash process entirely and just play whatever the optimal lineup is.
So that's
and I'm obviously my goal throughout the course of the day is to find the contest that people make the most mistakes in,
right,
and just get as much diversification as possible. And then like in basketball, like this past NBA season, like I literally played the Roto Grinders, Played IQ, whatever they call it, whatever it's called, whatever the project. And obviously, when things happen throughout the course of the slate, you're late swapping to the better lineup, right? You're not just leaving it as it is at 7:00, but like because the difference between me picking out one of the top 5 or whatever, or something that's the 1v1, 2v2, just like I think I could be profitable just doing that. It takes me 15 seconds to put it in, and now I could spend the rest of the time. Now it's all GPP in my mind, and it's just like, to me, it's I described it as like the equivalent of an index fund in the stock market. Of like, sometimes I look at this cash lineup and I go, I would have not chosen this because it's doing that, throwing in a $3,600 player that's very high variant just to get in Giannis, and I'm like, I'd much rather get this $4,800 guy and play this guy. But like over time, mathematically, if I trust the projections, this is the quote highest EV cash lineup, but the swings will be higher. But my peace of mind is some days I'll get lucky with it, and sometimes I won't. But at least I don't have to think about it. I could just assess it 3 months from now, and that's this past NBA season was my most profitable NBA cash season, even though my GPP play was kind of break even.
Yeah, I'll say I hadn't really thought about it until you mentioned it just now. I think the only times I've really tried to do the cash and GPP at the same time was during NBA, which would probably be why it was a problem for me, because that's the one sport where I do I use my own projections for NBA. And so I think that kind of is where I would screw up in cash, is like, it's easy for me to just be like a little bit higher or lower on somebody that, the field feels very differently about. And I would end up just taking like a stand I didn't really want in cash, because I'm just using my own stuff and it's going to be different. Whereas in tournaments, that's great. If I'm slightly different on somebody, that's good. Or even if I make like a slight mistake in something, it's fine in tournaments because I'm going to be different. But in cash, like, it just kills you. So now that you mentioned it, I think that is actually kind of where I was making mistakes, because like I wasn't leaving myself time to go through and say like, okay, wait, do I really want this guy? Did I, over project him by a little bit, and that's throwing everything else off? Whereas in the other sports, like you said, I'm not going to make that mistake because I'm just using optimals.
Right, so I guess I've just gotten lucky against you, because I just looked at my rotor tracker. I have a 74% win rate against you in head-to-heads.
Overall?
But most of that came in this past NBA season because you were playing cash games, right? That's why I was like, you mentioned that, I'm like, okay, let me. I know I've been auto matched or something, right? Because I'm not purposely taking people's games or anything.
It sounds like you probably should be.
Right? Maybe I should be. Right. Well, it's a net profit of $201, average buy at $12.78. So, minus the rake or whatever. So thanks for the $200.
Yeah, and but yeah, that's now when you mentioned it, that's kind of the issue that I was having, and it was interesting because it also was kind of just defeating the point that or the reason I was playing cash games anyway, because I was playing I don't even think I was playing bad lineups. I was just playing contrarian lineups because I was using nobody else.
Right.
Yeah, nobody else is using what I'm using, so they're just naturally contrarian, and I'm just like, wait, so now I'm playing cash games with huge swings, and I'm playing tournaments with huge swings. Like, why am I doing this?
Right. If anything, you could take your own stuff and just aggregate it with Osmo's projections to even it out.
Right.
But you notice people that do that. I mean,
oh yeah,
you have to note. I mean, if you take the time, and you know the sources, there are plenty of people that I know do exactly. I mean, I'll just take 4 projection sources, aggregate them together, click the optimal button, and go. That's what that lineup's gonna. I know exactly what the lineup is going to be.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that do it. I think it's a matter of just figuring out which sources they're using.
Or which weight they're putting on each source.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But, I mean, a lot of times in NBA, DFS specifically, especially on the slates where this guy's out, this guy's in, and, there's, 2 or 3 guys that are just, if you're not playing them in cash games, I don't know what you're thinking.
Right.
That you could essentially, if you ran whatever projections you're looking at and look at, the top 5, 10 lineups, go, I'm going to see this lineup by a couple of people, I'm going to see this lineup by a couple of people. I think FanDuel NFL is very similar. And we had, obviously every NFL season, especially on FanDuel, as opposed to DraftKings where the pricing is tighter. We're going to have every week, there's going to be some Reddit thread or some Twitter thing of the 37 people that are colluding against them. Because how is it possible on a 13-game NFL slate that all these people have the same lineup? And it's people that literally don't talk. I have that lineup also. And, I did not, it's impossible not to come up with that lineup. And they go, how is it impossible? Well, because once you have the 3 or 4 guys that are so obviously underpriced, and you're spending all your salary, there's only so many places that you could possibly go. Typically the only difference is going to be a quarterback and defense or something like that, or the third wide receiver. And typically did you take the $3,500 defense or the $3,200 defense? Did you take Josh Allen, or did you go all the way up to Mahomes or something like that type of thing?
And then you get the really fun Twitter threads where if people aren't playing the same lineup, they're cheating. But also if they are playing the same lineup, they're cheating because they might or might not know each other. Oh, no, the three-man arguments are the best. Yeah. It just shows, they're cheating because they're playing the same lineup in 3-mans. I go, no, that shows how stupid they are. Right. It shows that they are probably working together to make a lineup, but they don't care about actually maximizing their EV.
Or they're not even working together to make they're literally
right. Yeah. Right? Yeah, but there's cases where we know that they are, but they're not cheating you by playing the same lineup against you in a 3-man. They're giving you 2 different odds. Yeah.
But that's exploitable. That 3-man lobby
sure.
is absolutely. If you wanted to just make a living just exploiting the 3-man lobby, you could figure. I could figure out McLovin's lineups, no problem.
Oh yeah, I mean you can go. All you do in a 3-man, if you're playing against people that are going to either have the same lineup or a very similar lineup, just find some 2v2 or something that is less than a 2-to-1 to lose, and you're gonna make money basically.
Right. And the more that the more that they have the same lineup, it's auto profit at that point.
Right.
So in those NFL FanDuel whatever things, if you see a 5-man in the a $50 5-man and 4 guys have the same lineup, that can't be collusion. That's actually the dumbest thing to do. They're doing it independent. They're being late. I describe it as most of the higher stakes players, high volume players, are more lazy than colluding or seemingly having similar lineups. Or it's more the fact of they're playing $120,000 in volume. So if they're duplicated in their $5 and $10 3-mans, how much time is it going to be worth it to go individually, and it's just Empire Maker's entering everything. He's not giving a shit.
You're making what you think is the best lineup. You're hitting +1 to everything in the lobby, and you're moving on with your day. You're not going through to make sure that you don't know anyone else in your $10 3-mans.
But don't you think that for people that are playing less volume than that's you should be exploiting that? I mean, Eric talks about it on this. I mean, when he plays the luxury box in NFL or whatever, he goes, no, there's a lot of people that are just playing their cash lineups. There's a lot of when Dalvin Cook's going to be 32% owned in GPPs, like in the large field, he's going to be like 48, 52% owned. So it's like, dude, I just have to find a 2v2 and a different stack. And like, these people are not playing bad lineups, and they're playing like a $3,000 entry contest, but they're playing 3,000 as part. It's the same thing as me putting in like, oh, I'm going to play $4,000 in NBA cash, but I'm also going to throw that lineup into a $12 single entry contest. It's not optimal, but it's not. Is it worth my time to make a different $5 single entry lineup or a $12 single entry lineup and a $3 single? Like, no, I'm just gonna. If it gets there, it gets there. It's not optimal, but it only represents like 0.5% of my volume. So, like on that scale, it makes sense. But if you're only playing $50 worth of volume, like then you should be spending the time to.
Oh yeah.
To do all that.
And that goes for all the sports too. Like when I had said I moved up in stakes after my recent hot streak, I started playing like the 2K or 3K, 1500, whatever they were offering MLB, because I knew that, let's say it's a 20-person field, there's like 3 or 4 people playing their cash lineup in baseball, and it's just like it's going to be a good lineup, but basically my thinking was if I started out hot in this and kind of can not go on an immediate losing streak where, I'm losing 2 and 3K every single night in this. Like, I know over time I can beat this, not because, like, I'm better than the people that are in it, but because they're just throwing their cash lineups in and it's baseball and I can just not play their, have a different team, basically, and come out ahead over time. I didn't start hot. I lost money quick, and so I just stopped doing it. But, like, that's the case even when you move down in stakes, like in the 3-mans and stuff. Basically, it's almost like if you're not paying attention to who's in your 3-mans, you're really giving up an edge, because you should be playing, the best lineup you can when you're playing against people that, especially in, NFL, you're going to get people that like are just totally casuals and don't know what they're doing. You should be playing the best lineup you can, but you also can make money against the good players by just, finding a 2v2 or 3v3 that isn't that far off and is going to just beat them when they're duped, which they're going to be a lot.
Right. I mean, and one of the things that I do, I mean, my whole approach in playing DFS is exploitation of everyone else, is that look everywhere. I mean, like I listen to the MLB strategy show on Awesemo, and that heresy! Oh my God, I have a show on Roto Grinders and I listen to an Awesemo show. Oh my God, because it's a good show and you talk about DFS in terms that you should be talking about DFS, right?
Appreciate it.
Right, that this team has this team has this percent chance it's going to be in this percent of lineups. Is this positive leverage, negative leverage? Just general strategies, and not like who's going to hit a home run today, because who the fuck knows? This guy's a 32% chance. It's going to happen today. I don't know, but based on the projections, he has a 32% chance. I don't know. Is he going to be more than 32% owned? Then fade him. There you go. Done. End of story. But listening and seeing all the other content. Like, that's more likely to affect how I play than, like, making my own projections or anything. Like, you make your own for NBA, and me, I'm just like, I can't build anything better than what's out there currently.
Right.
And my attitude is that on a baseball slate, wouldn't it make more sense for me to, okay, well, I'm going to take a look at the Roto Grinders projections. I'm going to take a look at the bat projections. I'm going to take a look at Awesemo's projections. I'm going to take a look at Daily Roto. I'm going to take a look, because I know that other people are looking at it. Like, so even if I don't agree with it, even if I believe one source is better than the other, like, I need to weigh ownership. So, like, they could be a slate. In NFL, this happens like ETR. Established a run. Yeah. Like, I have to, it's the cost of doing business to subscribe. Yeah. I think their content is good. So I mean
I subscribe pretty much everywhere. Like I don't care about what people say or write or talk about on shows. I just want the data and to know, people. There's a lot of people in this industry that build better projections than I possibly can. And so I like seeing some of the data, but also just it gives you an idea of where people are going to go. I've said it before too. Like I think I spent a lot of time like during the quarantine, the COVID break. Kind of just working on my stuff in Excel where, not projection models, but just stuff that I've built to sort of try and automate my tournament process to like account for a bunch of things and give me the lineups that I should play. I spent time on that. And to me, working on that kind of stuff is such a bigger opportunity for an edge at this stage of the industry. back in 2014, 2015, when I started, if I had been capable of building a good projection system, I would have printed money. Now, everybody can pay, you can get good projections for free. You can pay very little for them. That's not where the edge is, really, I don't think, anymore. It's more about finding ways to utilize those and leverage them in a way where your lineups are going to help you win. Like, I think it's just kind of, there's still an edge in DFS. It's just moved in that direction away from, just creating your own projections.
Right. I mean, the best 2 hours I've ever spent in my DFS career was building my little leverage MMA thing. I was building lineups like that, but not as precise. I was using lineup HQ or whatever. And then I'm like I'm still getting too many dupes. I'm still getting, I feel like I'm playing properly, and I'm getting steak knives, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a more precise way that I'm not trying to estimate stuff. It's like, okay, I'm going to play less of this guy, but how much less of this guy should I be playing? How much? And it's not completely automated because I still have to add VLOOKUPs and drag and scrape data in, and James McCool's helping me with some of that stuff.
Okay. I still do all mine copy and paste.
Right. But I'm saying, to me, it's easier to just I know it's correct if I just if I just go to best fight odds and just type it in. Exactly. I'll do this every day. Right. I know that I could do it that way, but I would love to save the extra hour total, so I could just look at something at 4 o'clock before a slate and just kind of do it like that. But to me, you're right. Those are the types of things. But doesn't it frustrate you then that I believe that it's weird to say, there are a lot of sharper players that are the edge is lowering. I think that the skill gap is widening. I think from a cat, I think in 2012, 2014, that era, I consider that the non-projection era. Right. Where there was people had projections, it's just you didn't know who they were Condia. They were that type, it wasn't publicly available. So, because so much of the field was going by feel, the difference between skillful players and average players, the bad players were bad players. I'm going to put in a guy that's not even in the starting lineup. You're losing. And average players could beat those guys back then. But the feel people, the watch the tape people, those types of, I know baseball and I don't have to care about math or strategy or whatever. This guy's on a hot streak. This guy is 3 for 4 off the pitcher, that type of stuff. That could still win in 2014 because there were enough bad players that, you still had enough, the average player had enough common sense. Now you move to 2017, 2018, now we start getting, Fantasy Cruncher and projection systems that are available, typically for purchase. Obviously back in 2015, you had Basketball Monster, which was a cheat code, right? Because you could just, I didn't play back then, but that's what I heard.
I played. I didn't use it, but it was around.
Right, but in 2017, 2018, now the average players that knew better are how do I step up my game? And they started using projections that they weren't making, but it made them much better than average players. But the players below them are still field players and are still who, 1v1 type of questions. And now it's 2021. The projections have just gotten even better. The tools, we have simulation tools now. We have stuff like the top stacks tool, the top, and all of this type of stuff. And the people that are using that type of stuff are typically the people that already were on board in 2017 with the projections. But we still have the user base of these casual. I don't want to call them casual. These are people that literally they'll play every day, but are building one-off lineups in baseball, are not running back stacks in football, are not looking at any data and just going, I think that this team sucks, I'm going to play this guy versus this team. I think that the percentage of the user base on these sites are as big as they ever were, and these new tools are just making. Now there's more of that top, someone like Alex, back in 2017 is way more profitable than he is in 2021, but he's still profitable. But the average player, if you stay on your average length, you're just losing more and more money until you step up. So I think that gulf.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, you can actually see it in my Roto Tracker and the way I view it as someone that, came up playing tournaments, I started like having success the end of 2015, had a bunch of success beginning 2016, and I was building lineups by hand, kind of just thinking in terms of like, I understood how to be contrarian, and I understood, I didn't have ownership projections, but I understood, like, this player is going to be popular. I can play this guy at the same salary, and he has the same ceiling, even if he's not quite as good a play. I understood that's what I wanted to do, and I could make a lot of money in like 2015, 2016 because projections weren't readily available. There weren't that many people that were making legitimately good lineups, and whatever projections, whatever players people were landing on to be the chalk, it was just not typically that good. So I was able to just, completely destroy those. Then 2017, 2018, I just started getting wrecked because everyone gets access to better projections. So the chalk becomes better. They're playing guys that they actually should be playing. And my approach is still basically just play low-owned guys, stay away from the field. And it was really difficult for me to be still to make lineups that had a good chance at competing now that everyone else is using, or a lot of people are using good projections that are getting them on good plays. And then late 2018, early 2019, coinciding with me going to Awesemo and getting to pick Alex's brain a little bit more and kind of plugging some holes, it kind of clicked for me like, oh, okay, so you need to come up with a way where you still want to play contrarian, but you need to accept that projections are good now. It's not as easy as just saying, oh, okay, everybody's going to play this guy. Everybody's wrong most of the time. Just play this guy instead. You have to have some sort of basis for like, yeah, a lot of the chalk these days is actually going to be pretty good. And you need to find ways to still make contrarian lineups around that. And then I got back to, winning and putting up pretty good results. So, I'm with you. It's kind of, there's still that. There's definitely still that group of people who I think kind of just got left in like 2017, 2018 and haven't really adjusted.
Yeah, but as a content creator, like, yeah, we have maybe similar personalities on Twitter. I don't think I'm as much of an asshole as people think that I am, but
yeah, I don't think I am either.
Right, but like I just don't put up. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm from New York. I just don't put up with it. Like either I'm going to teach you how to play the right way, or like feel free to get stuck in the past. It's just like you do these shows, and that's why I say the strategy show is great because there's no interaction with people. But I mean, like, so you and Greg or you and Josh or whatever can talk about DFS. Where if you listen to the whole show, I guarantee you've probably gotten negative comments from I listened to the whole show and you never told me who you liked.
Oh yeah.
Right, but I'm saying, but that's not how you play DFS.
It's
a game of probabilities. But to me, those are the people that there's still a huge amount, and these are people that still pay for content, yet there's so much stuff that doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm trying to get down to the stuff that matters, and yes, there's 80% of this content is useful, but most of it is already accounted for in the projections. So if you want to know why someone is projected high, here's some information for you. But to spend people have emailed me and asked, like, how much you do this full time? How much time do you spend per day researching a baseball slate? I go 40 minutes.
Yeah,
I mean,
however long it takes me to write the article.
right. You're right, but I mean, I'm not even doing that.
Right.
You have to do that because you're writing some piece of content. But if I show up, it's when are all the lineups but the Angels in on an MLB slate or the Dodgers or something, because typically they're late. And then it's like, okay, now I could start, like, well, you didn't look throughout the course of the day. Like, no, why?
Right.
Like, all the work is done.
I used to dig into, as much stuff as I could back when I was hand building lineups and trying to, find angles to be contrarian. And I think that was fine back then. But again, then you got to like 2017, 2018, where it was just like, yeah, me doing that isn't beating people's projection systems. I need to find a different way around it. I don't know, the way it's always weird to me that people either take the time or pay money or both to consume content, but they do it with the mindset of like, I'm going to consume this content because I think this person's going to agree with me, more so than like I'm paying money or taking time to like learn. And I don't know, that's kind of how I view like producing content, even when it comes to like writing articles. Like in DFS, I don't think typically you're going to be able to just take some article from the afternoon and make good lineups off of it. But I think that there's still, if you're someone trying to learn, I think that there's value. And so like, when I write, I'll try and include stats that I think are useful. Like you said, explaining why a person projects well. So that, like, if you're someone that wants to say, okay, and this is kind of, how I learned DFS, from like Roto Grinders back in the day, was, watching shows and being like, okay, this is what these guys are looking at. This is what they're talking about. If I want to be able to figure stuff out on my own, this is where I would start. So, like, I think that's where articles are useful. But the whole, like, pick between player A and player B, and that's how you win at DFS. It's just so weird to me that people like cling to that mindset.
Yeah, but that's the mindset from 2014, 2015. Right. It's from back then. But to me the articles back in 2017, because I started in 2015, I used the articles like I started getting to NBA and I would read Notorious, Grind Down. Yep. And to me that was I called it the Am I Crazy content. Of like,
right.
Like I could look at a slate and go, okay, this guy's underpriced, that guy's underpriced. This is and you develop a cash game lineup, right? Because these are the best plays from a median perspective, but not necessarily the best from a strategic perspective. But at least I could identify that. So to me, the first step of being a good GPP player is you need to be able to. If you can't build a good cash lineup, how are you ever going to be a good GPP player? Because if you don't know how to leverage off the chalk, if you don't know what the chalk is.
Right.
Yeah, so exactly. To me, those are what the articles are. The articles are, here's the chalk, here's the cash lineup, but so many people view that as, those are the best plays, and that's how I win $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of learned how to build like a good lineup the same way. And then I remember, back at the time on Roto Grinders, it was DC and Hefe. Like, they had a tournament show. And I was like, man, these guys think the way I think. And they're good at explaining what they're thinking. And so to me, it wasn't like, I don't care if they like this player that I don't like or vice versa. It's just thinking, like, hearing how they think about approaching a slate from a tournament perspective. And that helped me a lot. And it got to where I would literally, I was still in law school at the time. I can remember just sitting at my computer, and I would, like, by hand, just write out like basically what I thought the best lineup was, like what my cash lineup I guess would be, and then saying, okay, like, what do I think the 2 or 3 weakest pieces of this lineup are? What alternatives are in that price range and at that position that give you, are going to take the similar number of shots or give me the same ceiling or whatever, and then just switch those guys out in a few different ways and throw them into tournaments. Like, that was how I played tournaments back then, and it was from learning from articles and shows the way that people thought that were successful, as opposed to, just listening to like, oh yeah, he thinks this is a good play, I should play him.
Right. I mean, and same way that I learned from Bales, pretty much.
Right.
Like, anything that I say about game theory is not like I didn't make any of this up. Like, I just happened to be the one that put it together, but I'm not like, people are like, oh, you're taking credit for something that Bales said 7 years ago. It's like, well, Bales didn't even make it up either. Like, this is something from 100 years ago. I mean, this is game theory. That's not...
Right, yeah. I took this class in college before I knew what DFS was.
Right. I mean, same that Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's like he didn't make up physics. He's just communicating. Right. he's the teacher, right? There's nothing like that. But do you think, one thing I've noticed, okay, over the past month, we both know that over the course, the softest games typically start at the beginning of the seasons. And as it goes on, basically bad players lose too much money and they're gone. And that's especially true with cash games, right? Because a lot of times bad players don't even play cash games, right? They want to play, I want to put in $8 and try to win 10,000, and they don't care about double ups. One thing I've noticed over the past month, especially, I don't know if you have or I'm seeing things, because I've not done actually any data analysis on this. I've done purely based on feel, and especially since I study every slate after every day anyway. So, like, do you notice that? And this is this goes on to the thing of why I subscribe to Establish the Run for football.
Yeah.
Are you noticing that the highest leverage stacks in the Osmo Stacks tool are becoming way more owned because people look and see that they're the highest? Like we had a baseball slate yesterday where the Yankees were projected to be like the worst stack to play, and they actually came in lower ownership than I even projected them to be. And I'm like, had I known that, I would have not just X'd them out completely because I was only playing 9 lineups. But there was also another slate a couple of days ago. What?
It happened with the Braves a few days ago.
Yes, that's exactly what I was saying with the Braves. Like, the Braves, if they're going to be 4% owned, I'm going to play I played 150 lineups, and I played like 25% of them, and then go in, and they're the chalk. Like, and I'm like, but then I noticed that theme of like, Well, obviously, certain content providers, especially this dog days of summer in August, these large field tournaments where people are playing 150 lineups, 100 lineups, they have to be looking at this type of stuff. And it's like, now you have to play the meta game of, are people going to overreact to that? And at that point, I go, there's no edge, and why don't I just save my money to NFL?
Yeah, it's kind of turning into like, it almost feels like poker. Just, the like you get to the next level where it's like, okay, well, now they're at level 2, so I need to play at level 3. But yeah,
have you noticed? Is it not just me? Am I saying something that's not like?
No, you're right. Like it's felt like more often. It's felt more often recently where it's just been like the slate starts and I message someone, like, well, okay, I just played this slate terribly because everything that I thought was going to happen isn't happening. Like it's just wrong. The Braves was the perfect one the other day. Like even like doing the shows and stuff, like I'm looking at it and I'm just like, man, I know, like it makes complete sense why they're projected to be low owned because like they were way more expensive than the Yankees and it was like the same spot basically. And it was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. I'm also a little concerned because I'm not sure it's going to play out this way, but whatever. And then the slate starts, and it's like Freddie Freeman, 28%, Ozzie Albies, 20%. Right. I'm just like, all right, I may as well just lit my money on fire tonight.
Right. But, I mean, to me, it comes down to, like, people are looking at the right things.
Yeah. People
are thinking the same way. And if you, it comes down to, like, the stupid, like, how smart do you have to be type of question. I'm not saying that you're stupid, but if this Joe Schmo could in a second go, well, the Braves are obviously under-owned compared, like, right. How many other people are thinking that? And especially in large field contests with 150 maxers, that's going to be compounded. And if everyone's using this, and especially with people that are aggregating ownership, so now none of the ownership is being affected. This is very similar on the last episode, talking to Nerdy Tenor. Like, his process is built around having that type of thing, that metagame inside of his simulations.
Right.
Of how much of the field is going to react to the fact that this team is too low on, so it could find that equilibrium. Now, he has it all automated, and I'm never going to be able to make anything close to what he could do.
Right.
But you have to, like in NFL, this first month of NFL, we don't have to think like I mean, like.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just that it's so noticeable. It's August of 2021, towards the end of a baseball season, where basketball is more popular with casuals than baseball is. And it's already gotten to the point where, like, you have to go to the third level, which is still beatable. It's just that in 6 years of playing DFS, I've never really gotten to this point. We'll see it sometimes in the high stakes, because Eric will talk about, well, everyone's going to play the Cowboys, so I'm not going to play this team. And then the Cowboys end up going under-owned, and the Chiefs go over-owned because everyone moved there. But that's only a small, like, set of the user base. But I've never seen large field stuff where I'm like, I'm going to jam in the Braves at low ownership and then end up playing the chalk in all my lineups.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of like the running joke in live finals. There's always going to be like one just stupid play that ends up being like 5 times as popular as they should be because everyone lands on the same contrarian play. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to me because I've always thought that, if DFS is around, let's say DFS is around forever, people have talked about it being solved in cash games. I think cash games get to the point where they're not beatable, or beating the rake at least. I've always thought tournaments, there will be an edge because even kind of like you had seen in poker tournaments, things just shift. Like you'll eventually get to where everyone is playing good contrarian lineups, so you can actually just play the best lineups and be contrarian. And not to say that we're there now, but I think it's definitely as close to that as we've ever gotten to, where there have been a lot of slates lately where it's just like, man, if I just completely ignored ownership and just played whatever lineups I want, I actually would have a better set of lineups than I do based on what I built for this tournament.
Well, it all depends on how much you weigh, like the projections around the injury, whether or not, like I put in my own, like I adjusted, I literally adjusted manually. It's not scientific at all. I mean, I could just from experience of playing, go in, especially for pitchers, and go.
Yeah, say pitchers. I mess with pitchers. I leave hitters alone.
Right. But I mean, just like the stack tight. Like I look at a stack, and the RG ownership is like this stack's going to be, I see the batters 6, 4, 3, 1, 1. I go, this is more going to be like 10, 12. Like this team has a 5.6 implied run total. I know they're slightly more expensive, but so everyone's going to jam in $5,900 Carlos Hernandez or something, and they'll be able to play this team. So like there's no way they're going to be that low owned. So you change it, and you go, okay, you adjust it based on that. But most people don't do that. So I think a lot of times that's how those wild discrepancies happen, where everyone thinks they're playing the low owned stack, and it ends up being the second highest owned one on a 14-game slate.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's something like I typically don't. I guess I'll have to start. Kind of glad that you brought that up, because I'd been thinking about it. I was like, man, do I start, kind of just manually adjusting things like that, or am I crazy? And like, this is just, it seems like it was one of those things I thought about, because it was like, I've been losing. Maybe I'm just like noticing things that aren't really there, like that I'm playing bad, kind of bad lineups every other night based on ownership. But yeah, I do think we've seen that for sure.
Yeah, but your process of when the slate locks, you look at this ownership and you go, I just lit my money on fire.
Yeah,
is very similar to how I describe on the pregame show of when you review your slate afterwards. Your goal is to say, had I known this information, would I have played these lineups? So what you're essentially saying is, had I known the Braves were going to be the chalkiest team on the slate, I wouldn't have had 25% of them. So obviously, if the Braves went off and put up 20 runs, it's still your mistake. It's still a mistake. It's still a mistake. You would have won $50,000 knowing that, wow, if I had known this information, I wouldn't have played this way. Like, that's what you should be judging yourself by.
Right.
Not the result. Oh, but what? Because you'll get the response back from a lot of people. It's like, yeah, but they would. Well, what happens if they do well? Said,
yeah, you lose.
Right, or vice versa, right? Like yesterday's slate, we had a slate where like I was only playing a couple of lineups, and I'm like, instead of trying to figure out if the Yankees are going to be under, like I know they're going to be owned. I know the Astros are going to be owned. I know these two. I know it's Lynn and the two pitchers in this game are going to be owned. So since I only have 9 lineups, I'm just going all in with the complete opposite. Just like just what is the easiest path to first that I know that I could get? Okay, I'm gonna stack the White Sox against Manoah. I'm gonna stack the Blue Jays against Lynn. I'm gonna play Inoa, the pitcher, against the Yankee stack that I predict to be the highest. Right? Yeah. I would have probably played Lynch had I known the Astros was going to be that high. And I don't have to think anymore because there's no way for me to be directionally not accurate there. Like, I may be off by, Manoah's not 55% owned, he's 48%. He's still the highest owned. Like, I'm not going to be, like, it's going to be a high variance. I mean, it's going to be, like, either I'm going to win or lose all my money, which turned out I lost all my money.
Yeah, I was on the same spots as you.
Right. So, but, like, that's so much easier than, to me, if you learn how to play that way. We have people in the RG Discord that are like, I'm trying to play 150 lineups. Tell me the magical optimizer settings. Because there's always magical optimizer settings.
How many uniques, how much randomness.
Right. Like that matters. And they're not getting the concepts of how to build one good lineup. Right. And now they're trying to scale and compound their errors. So I said, why don't you just start with who's the highest owned pitcher stack against them? It's like, so you want me to stack the Diamondbacks against Jacob deGrom? I go, probably that's negative EV, but I'd rather you err towards that side as far as conceptually thinking about GPP than try to think about what chalk pieces to play, right? You go, who's good chalk and who's bad chalk? It's like, we don't know until after the slate, but we do know that this pitcher is going to be 50% owned, and the batters are absolutely directly negatively correlated to it. So now your goal is now you've learned the stacking against the Grum. Now you've learned to play the chalk things together that almost no first place equity. Now find the balance in there.
Right. Yeah, like it's just like thinking about it in terms of payoffs. If you make a bad play that is low owned and you get really lucky, you're going to get paid really well. If you make a bad play that's really popular and you get really lucky, you're still probably not going to get paid that well. So like kind of, and then, as you get better and more experienced, you start to figure out exactly what low owned plays you should be getting to, and you can avoid stacking against the Grom. But I think that's it. To me, it's kind of similar. Like with poker, you could be way too aggressive, but it was better to come in with that mindset and adjust down towards being like a tighter player than to be like a tight player and try and have to learn how to play aggressively, because like it's just it was so hard for those people to do, and there was so much more money to be made, at least back in the 2009, 2008, by being aggressive. It's kind of, that's how I view it. Like, I think it's been a lot easier being someone that was willing to just play way too contrarian to come in and like have to tone that down and be like, okay, like you don't have to go that crazy, than to be someone that is, like, oh, well, what if the 25% owned Braves do well and I don't play them? It's like, yeah, who cares?
Well, I think people get lulled because here's another mindset that is hard to teach because it seems counterintuitive. Because I mentioned it because I mean I get DMs, I answer emails. I know you unless someone's sending you nudes, that you ain't answering their DMs, or at least a good podcast recommendation.
Right? Yeah. Send me money or try and go on a date with me, But other than that, I'm probably not answering.
Right, but people like in the aspect of the more contrarian you play, the more profitable you'll be in the long run, but the more likely you'll lose.
Yeah.
Like that mentality. So when people play too safe, which I think is the biggest edge for people like us, like that's how we make money. We make money not off the lineups of people that forgot to enter a lineup or putting injured players in. We make the money off the people that are essentially playing cash lineups in GPPs, lineups that don't have much first place win equity. That people get lulled by, I'm going to play the best plays, get different in one spot, but like that's still not enough. Well, but they cash often enough that it's like, oh, well, I came in 178th place and got a 4x or something. It's like, okay, not bad. I'm getting there, not realizing that like the 178th place, that was like the ceiling of that lineup. Like you ain't getting past there, and they're winning often enough that at the end of the season they're down like 6%, but it feels like they've won. Like 4 out of 7 days, it feels like I win.
Right.
Quote money because they won.
You get that good feeling, but there's no money that comes with it.
Right, there's the exactly. And then you look at someone like me, and I go, let me show you my stats from the 2019 season. It's like I played every baseball slate up to the beginning of September, and I lost money in 94% of them. And they go, then how you're a profitable player? It's like, yeah, I made $40,000.
Right.
And they go, how the hell did you do that? Yeah, because on the 6% of times that I won, it was a top 5 score. Like that's
right, exactly. Like you actually won.
Right, you actually won, but you have to be able to go through and go, yeah, I'm not gonna like cashing. Like how, other than from a sustainability perspective, like how much do you care about like 1.5xing a lineup?
Yeah, literally, I don't. And like you said, sustainability. Like, yeah, if I'm making 0% every slate, I'm gonna go broke pretty quickly. But outside of that, yeah, if I make like $900 on a slate, I just kind of consider it even. And if I lose $900, I consider it even. If I lose a couple thousand, that doesn't feel great. If I win a couple thousand, it feels okay. But yeah, it's, if I 1.5x, I'm like, yeah, whatever, I broke even today, on to tomorrow. If I lose 40%, yeah, okay, I broke even, on to tomorrow.
Right. As long as something. Sometimes you get the minus 90%, and you're just like, okay, I'm gonna have to dig out of that, right? But for it seems like from a content perspective, because we're both content creators, so I think there's how do you reconcile the fact of like I could listen to the MLB strategy show, and what you're saying is like most of the time I'm agreeing. I mean, like I'm agreeing with you, right? Like, oh, if this team's going to be this owned, and I'm more likely to do this. Yeah, but of course that's early in the morning. Sometimes the pitcher changes, the lineups change. Obviously, we're looking at different projections, so maybe it's like, you have this guy's going to be 22% owned because he projects as the second best, and I'm looking at like the bat, and I'm like, the bat fucking hates him, right? Like something like that, and maybe it won't be. But other than that, to me, I think what we both approach it as is that our job is to give people the possibilities, and the different. People have a hard time understanding that you could play 150 lineups, and I could play 150 lineups, and they could all look different, and our 150 lineups all have like around the same expected value. Like you decided to go 100% Alec Manoah, and I went 100% Chicago White Sox.
Right.
And our lineup sets, if we play this out a million times, we'd end up with the same amount of money. And it's like, it just comes down to which one do you want to do. Now, there may be thousands, 10,000s of lineups that are unprofitable and at different extents. Obviously, ones that leave out, pinch hitters and stuff, they're way at the bottom. But I believe that, like, I do the advanced sports analytics show for NFL, and the number one thing is, how come you don't tell me, like, what stacks you're going to play? I'm like, no, we're just going through game by game, going, if you were to play this game, this would be a good approach because it would be contrarian from this type of lineup construction. But, like, I've given you 20 options. I don't know which one is the best. Like they're all so close to one another that as long as you do one of these 20 things, you're probably going to be better, profitable on average. You approach that on the strategy shows very similarly, but how do you get away from which what we have like Cheese especially, Dave Potts.
Yep.
A lot of times he writes his article, and he'll win on FanDuel with a lineup that like is like the worst play on this, like, because he said if I play 150 lineups, I have at least one of every stack.
Right.
But it goes against like the people that we're talking about, those casual, average, regular players that are like, well, which teams do you like? It's like, well, there's a probability for any team to go off or anything, and if you're building a diversified strategy, you most likely have a little bit of everyone. It comes across as, well, you don't have any conviction off of anything.
Right.
And so how do you do a show? How do you respond and do a show where you'd be like, picture that time. The Braves are going to be under-owned. I'm going to be a lot over them. And then next thing you know, maybe later in the day, that ownership comes up. And on the show, like 6 hours later, you're talking about how little Braves that you have. And then someone's listening going, what stats did you look at that made it that you like the Braves in the morning and not the Braves in the evening? And the real stat that you're looking at is ownership, but that has nothing to do with baseball.
Oh yeah, so I really like that or at least the shows that I'm on are the game by game, because it makes it a little bit easier for me not to get caught up in, oh, I like this guy. Because that was one of the hardest things for me when I started doing content, was then, especially when I was still building my hand, was to do a show where, I have to talk about the best plays on the slate, and then I have to go hand build a contrarian lineup after spending the day saying what the best plays are.
Right, and then you'd get the conspiracies of they're giving you the best, they're trying to manipulate the market. It's like, well, no, because you're not playing double ups, so you probably aren't going to be playing some of these best plays because you want them to fail.
Yeah, I still remember writing an NBA article. I ended up winning the slam or whatever on FanDuel. And it was like Ersan Ilyasova and some other just terrible like min salary power forward. And literally all I had done, I played like one lineup that night, put in like all the guys I really wanted, and had minimum salary left at power forward, which was like a really weak position. And I basically just said like, whatever, these guys are going to play, maybe I'll get lucky. I got lucky, I won. And I had people on Twitter, you didn't even mention him in your article, like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, man, if I was mentioning Ersan Ilyasova in this article, you should never read it again. Like, he was not a good play. That's not, he was the weakest part of the lineup. But yeah, so going game by game, I think makes it a little bit easier, because it does at least allow me to like you were saying, kind of say like, if I were to stack this team, I would go about it in this way, as opposed to, just going through and saying like, oh, the best team on the slate is XYZ. So I think that helps a little bit. And I think it's also like, I don't know, the more I've done it, the more I've done shows and written, I've just kind of started to care less about that. It's kind of, I think I present content in a way where if you grasp DFS well enough to be a winning player eventually, you understand what I'm talking about and what I'm doing. And if you don't, you don't. But that's kind of not my problem also.
Right. But I guess that's a very similar approach that I try to take of like, if you don't get it, you don't get it. I'm sorry. Like,
right. Like I'll be more than happy to try and explain it to you. Like if people in YouTube chat say something that I don't think makes sense, I don't want to belittle them. But if I think I can like quickly explain why what they said doesn't matter, I will. But, after that, it's still on them. It's, to me, I am doing what I can to talk through the slate to people that are at a point where they have some chance of success.
Right.
Some people
a lot of times you start trying to explain things, and I get to the very basic stuff, and it's like I give the coin flip example or a die example.
Right.
It's like the first thing I need to check is does this person understand expected value, and if they don't make that right choice on which bet to take, I'm like, I might as well just end it here, because if you don't even get that you shouldn't be laying 2 to 3 on a coin flip versus 7 to 1 on a 6-sided die roll. Well, I'm going to get the coin flip right more. Like, okay, then we're like this. How am I going to get into any of these other concepts if you don't get what a plus EV bet is to begin with?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not to, not that like I'm smarter than anybody, but like I get this. Some people don't. Like there's a ton of things that people just naturally don't get. There's a ton of stuff I don't understand at all that, other people it's natural to them. So, yeah, like there's just some I just kind of I've gotten to where I understand there's a section of people who at this point in time could not build a winning DFS lineup no matter what, basically. So
well, they could. They get lucky. It'd be
well,
something
right,
unintentional.
Right. They couldn't consistently build a lineup that would be expected to win because it just doesn't make sense to them even if you explain it.
Right. Or when I say lineups, not players, and then their heads explode.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So, well, should I play this player? It's like, well, should I play the chalkiest player on the slate? It's like I would play them if they're highest projected in the contrarian lineups, and in the non-contrarian lineups, don't play that guy.
Right.
They're like, but they're not asking that. They're asking, should I play that? Who is that guy going to do well? I don't know.
Right. Like, yeah, like I'll look through my lineups and it's like, oh, I have a 20% owned Aaron Judge, but he's with a stack that's, 0.8% owned. Yeah, cool. That's what I would like.
Right. But no one gives you the context of that.
What'd you say?
No one gives you the context. That's the thing. No one gives you the context. It's like, how am I supposed to answer this question? There is no answer to this question.
Yeah, like there are times that I'll pull up, like I'll upload my CSV on DraftKings and then I'll pull up my exposures in Fantasy Cruncher, and I'm like, oh wow, the Yankees are projected to be way overowned, and I'm still like even with the field on Aaron Judge, I wonder why, and then I go through my lineups and it's like, oh, because I'm way overweight on this 1% owned stack, so now I just have a bunch of Yankees.
Right, exactly. Do you get going back to the Magic optimizer settings, the Magic setting?
Yeah.
Especially because you guys over there use Fantasy Cruncher, which I vocally will never use. I'm not saying it's a bad software. I think it's great software. It's more personal to me that I'm not going to give a certain person money. And I could do just as much as I could do anything that I could accomplish. I could do with Lineup HQ or Labs as optimizer is fine. There's Daily Roto. They could get everything. As long as you're not doing anything because you're used to one thing for so long.
I was gonna say familiarity, I think, is the biggest thing.
Right. So like I don't want to come across as like, no, you should never use FC. It's just like it's kind of like not giving money to. I'm not gonna eat a certain food because of some like whatever. It's a personal choice of mine. That people jump in to like that. I tweeted about it the other time. This whole over the field, under the field type of thing. Like you mentioned, the reason why you were over on Judge is because you're playing lineups that have 1% owned stacks in them, and that's the reason you didn't purposely say I want to be over the field on Judge. You just ended there because of your exposure to some other team. But if someone else would look at that and go, well, you have 30% Judge, I'm going to put into my optimizer 30% Judge, they could end up with lineups where Judge is in the chalkiest stacks. And those lineups, while you could, I've told people, said, especially on the smaller slates, said, I could show you, if I build 150 lineups, I'll show you my exposures. You put those exact exposures and don't change any of your settings on Lineup HQ and put those as the maxes, you will get the exact same exposures as me, yet your lineups won't be anywhere near my lineups. Right. So what's the purpose of like over the field, under the field? Oh, I was sick. I was 60% on this guy. And then I look in Results DB and look at his lineups and go, these lineups are awful. Yeah, you're right. You were 60% on the guy that hit 2 home runs. But you know the reason why you didn't win first place? Because they were all in bad lineups. Actually, the lineups that you needed them in, you never got them in. How, I don't know what you do behind the scenes at Awesemo to teach people about Fantasy Cruncher, but do you believe that, I believe that I believe 90% of people that use optimizers are actually doing themselves a disservice by using one, that they have not learned how to scale, build, like you said, you built hand-built lineups in 2015. That's what I did. Right? And then you learn to build 5. Then you learn to build 10. Then you learn the dynamics of, well, if I have a lot of this expensive hitter, I'm going to have a lot of cheap catchers. And if I'm going to have this pitcher combination of 2 studs, I'm going to need a cheap stack. Like, you could visualize that in your head so you know that, Like, I'm not going to be surprised when I get the cheap Ranger stack in 30% of my lineups because I want to jam into Grum and Bieber. Like, that's the only way that happens. And if I know that a lot of people are doing that, now I have to find a different way of doing that. But that's not all based on, like, people start to think that, oh, you're going to go in and in basketball, especially when there's no correlation. Right, much. And you go, okay, I want 50% Beal, I want 40% this, I want 30% that, and then like I want 10% randomness, I want 3 uniques, and I was like, if they just told me what the magic numbers were, like I could just put in their magic numbers the next slate, and it's like, well, I care about the lineups. Like you could even put the same magic numbers in and get get lineups that are way worse than mine, right? Because I'm not building them by just like willy-nilly. Because you get that clumping problem. You get that all your chalk pieces are in these lineups and all your contrarian pieces are in those lineups. And I've seen people's builds that try to, like the mini-max, people send me their mini-max builds. And I go, what am I doing wrong? I've been playing. And I look at them and I go, a lot of times that's the problem. Like, yeah, you're right. You have 50% of this pitcher and 50% of that pitcher. But the 2 chalk pitchers, they're all in the same lineups together. And you're playing the pirate stacks with the 2 contrarian stuff and the expensive Soto one-off at 2% because you never considered your lineups. Right. You just looked for some magic. But you're over the field. Oh, but I'm over the field. But who cares?
Yeah, you have to do something, whether it's ranking lineups against each other, whether it's something even as simple as just like not letting any lineup have more or less than X ownership. Like do something to make it so that your lineups have some chance of not being too contrarian or too definitely too popular. But yeah, it's and I agree. It's that's why I try and make a point. Like yeah, I'm willing to say oh yeah, I think I'll be overweight on this pitcher because XYZ. But it's also XYZ typically doesn't even have that much to do with the pitcher. It might be, that pitcher is low owned, but also he's going to fit with, I really like this more popular stack or whatever. Like there's so much more that goes into it than, this is the pitcher's ownership or this is the hitter's ownership and I should be over or underweight.
Because you'll hear people that say, oh, the guy's 30%, right? We can see this in football, right? Yeah. Oh, Derrick Henry is going to be 35% this week. So that means either play 70% of him or X them out. And
or zero.
I'm like, what does that have to do with lineups? None of what you're talking about has any relevance whatsoever. It depends.
So much of the time, you're going to be right around the field because it makes sense.
Right. Like, most likely, if you believe 35% is efficient ownership for Henry, you should probably have 35% of them.
Right, and the lineups he's in should just be lower owned stacks and contrarian pieces here and there. But yeah, a lot of the times, especially on good players, like Derrick Henry, like Aaron Judge in baseball, the good players that are getting ownership, you don't want to. You're going to make life really difficult for yourself if you just say, yeah, I'm not going to play any player that's popular, no matter how good they are. Like it comes back to I think one of the biggest adjustments I've made semi recently is doing a better job of factoring in chances of success along with ownership. And it goes back to, positive leverage, negative leverage. But for a long time, I just kind of viewed it as not playing popular players. And it gets really hard when you're just removing certain guys from who you're willing to play because they're popular. And you're not considering, he's really good. Like there's obviously it's not a practical example because it never really comes up. But like, in theory, there could be a spot where someone is 88% owned and you should have more. You should have 100.
We see that basketball. You see that, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The 3K guy that's going to play 38 minutes in April. Like, yeah, cool. He's 88% owned, and people are like, oh, there's no edge. He's 88%. It's like 12% of the field just didn't play this guy.
Right. The efficient ownership probably is 97%.
Right. Exactly.
Right. You should have that much of them.
Yeah, that's a big thing, and I feel like it doesn't get talked about all that often. But like, it's a 2-part equation. It's not just the ownership.
Right, but also you need to weigh the effects of that person in the lineup as a whole. Because once there are 2 of those types of guys, then you're like, okay, I'm going to play 2 88% known players, and they're at certain positions, and it leads me to playing LeBron and Giannis. It's like, we'll find a way that the rest of your lineup is all mid-range guys. Or that's to me, it goes back to you have to do something, whether it's capping your ownership in Fantasy Cruncher or whatever optimizer you use, whether it's having a way to rank your lineups against each other once you make them, using some combination of projection, ownership, whatever other metrics you want to use. You have to have something to make it so that
you're prioritizing those lineups that, even if you are using popular players, you're prioritizing the lineups that have those players that, as a whole, are more contrarian than the other ones, even if they project similarly.
But that's all about the magic settings.
What'd you say?
It's all about the magic settings, though.
Yeah,
People
exactly.
will ask you, but they'll go, well, what are the set? What?
Right.
Like right?
Well, and like even that, I definitely don't spend nearly as much time like reviewing slates or lineups or anything as I should. But using something, and again for FC, it's lineup rewind. Like even to figure out the settings, it all depends on like what your process for building lineups is. Like I can tell you what I use, and it's going to be completely useless because you probably build your lineups in a completely different way than I do, and you don't need to have the same settings as me. It's like go in, spend time, just I think Dink said it on a show I watched a while ago. The point of the optimizer is just to efficiently build the lineups that you would build if you were building them by hand. So spend the time figuring out, if I do this, what happens to my lineups? And then at some point you'll get to where it's like, okay, I'm getting a good mix of lineups. The lineups look the way I want them to. These are the settings I should use.
Right, because let's take Excel for example. If I wanted to show I built a little marbles example for the pregame show showing expected value and duplication. Like if I ask you, Adam, build me that same thing to show the same. You could use different formulas. You could have different boxes.
Right.
Like I used product this of this thing, and you're like, no, I'm going to set up an array and do it this. Like there's multiple ways to do things. And an optimizer, like a lot of people ask me like what my randomness is, and I go 0. I go, so you don't have any randomness in your projections? Like I'm just using the optimizer to build the combinations of lineups I want. Right. Once I know that, I could change the projections. Like sometimes, in basketball, you're like, I'm getting too much of this guy, even when I put in, I only want 20% of him. So it's like, screw this. He's a 47-point projection. I'm 42.
Right.
You could do that, right? Because what I could do is increase the randomness, but that'll also increase the randomness of everyone else.
Right.
And it's like, I like the lineups the way I am. I just want less of this one guy, and then I'm good. And then you take a look at what people ask me, what the ownership, like sometimes I'll use the ownership constraints, min and max ownership. I go, what's a good one? I go, well, it depends on what the ownerships of the lineups that are on that slate.
Right.
On a 4-game basketball slate, I mean, the optimal may have 360% ownership because how many players are there to choose from? On a large slate, maybe that's 60. And maybe you're wrong. Maybe there is no number. It's a blunt tool of like, I just don't want these chalky pieces together. I'm going to solve this problem with this setting, but I could solve that problem with probably 4 other settings. I just find it easier to do it this way. It
really goes back to just, and you said it before about, whatever about familiarity with optimizers, just know what you're doing in and out. Like, know if I change this, it's going to have, like, if I change this to do this, it's probably going to have the unintended consequences of doing X, Y, and Z also. And so, like, you just really need to be aware of, like, how to do every single thing to make the lineups look the way that you want them to. There's no, like, magic setting. It's just everything interacts together, and it just takes time figuring out exactly how to make it all work in a way that you want it to.
Right. People will ask, why am I getting Jason Martin as a 2K one-off in all my lineups? Right? And I go, you know why? Because you're trying to play the 2 most expensive pitchers and the 2 most expensive stacks together. Like, just like that is what it is. Or you'll get the opposite of, why is Ohtani in 87% of my lineups? And I'm like, well, you're trying to play 2 cheap stacks together, and you have a high salary floor. Like, you're forcing the optimizer to spend 49.8, and it's like, well, that's the only way. Ohtani at 6,400 has to be in, like, all your lineups then, if you want to play this Pittsburgh Rockies combinations in half your lineups. Like, that's just, to me, that's just common sense. But it starts with what lineups do you want to build? And I think that frustrates people that, I think, Adam, do you think people see guys like you, me, Alex, build, use these optimizers? And what they're seeing is they're starting from the second step. They're like, oh, I just see a guy putting in a bunch of numbers and then cutting out some lineups here and moving some lineups there and kind of whatever and sculpting things. And then it's like, I want to learn how to do that. It's like, no, they missed the first step of what lineups do I want to build? And then we get into how do I build those lineups?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those where, like, and it's like this with anything, anything that people are relatively good at that you're less experienced at, you kind of like, have a tendency to just like
you assume
not acknowledge how much time they spent getting like that first step done and like understanding what they're doing. Like, and that's why I think that's why it's so frustrating with the like the unique and randomness question, because there really is no good way to explain it. Like, people will come to me, and like, oh, well, I'm getting, like you said, I'm getting too much of this guy because I told it to give me 40% of X and 28% of Y. And I'm like, okay, well, for me personally, I cap everyone at 100% and I let it do its thing because I have other ways to get it to do what I want it to do. So I can't even tell you how to fix your problem because I don't do the first step the way you do it. Like, there's just so many different ways to do it. You kind of just need to take the time to get it to find some way to get it to do what you want it to do. And it's probably going to be different than how I get it to do what I want it to do.
Right. I mean, in MMA, my process now, if I set the caps at 100%, I'd have like at all. I think people like randomness. I think people understand more than the uniques. To me, uniques are just all about diversification. It has nothing to do with like. People. I don't think people understand that the correlation between your lineups is more of a risk management issue. So, for instance, you could have on a slate, like we had a 6-game slate yesterday. It's like, if you wanted to build 150 lineups and have them all be White Sox and Blue Jay stacks, like your unique player is probably going to be one, right? Because, I mean, how many different combinations could there possibly be where they could be 3 uniques in each line? It's unlikely to. So if you make that strategic decision, your uniques would be 1. On a 6-game slate, if you're like, I'm going to play 15% of every team, there's a lot more combinations. So you probably, if you only set 1 unique, like you're going to, which still could be fine. You just may have all of your pirate stacks may be just 1v1s of each other. And you won't have this specific pirate stack with Stanton because you only set uniques as 1 and it wasn't jamming, and it was jamming in Judge into all of these lineups.
Right.
But if you set uniques at 2 or 3, it's going to be more divert. You're more likely to get Stanton instead of Judge in one of your pirate stacks. But
it helps to avoid clumping. But it also, like, even that, it interacts with randomness. It interacts with your exposure caps. Like, if you have really, really strict exposure caps and a ton of randomness, it doesn't really matter how many uniques you have. If you have no randomness and no exposure caps, you're probably going to want more uniques because otherwise you're just going to get one-offs of your lineup all the way down the line like you're building your top 150 cash lineups.
Right.
It's just, it all goes back to making it all work together for you.
And coming up with what lineups you want to play to begin with.
Yeah. And the way you figure out what works for you is to know what you want the lineups to look like when you build them and then play around with stuff until they start looking the way you want them to look.
Don't you get a lot of the magic settings questions?
Oh, all the time. Yeah.
Right. And it almost feels like they think that we're hiding something.
Right. Yeah. It's up there with, we tell you what plays to play, and then we play the other ones, just to throw you off.
They want the personal. We have the personal ones.
Right. Yeah.
Because we understand that you play differently from Alex, and you play differently from Rinpack, and Steve plays differently. But I want what's your personal ones? What's your personal ones? And but people ask me, well, I could show you what I did last slate, but I could guarantee you that my settings on the optimizer are going to look way different today than they will yesterday.
I can even tell you, like, I mostly, I adjust it to some extent, but mostly I'm using the same settings. I can tell you what they are, and you still won't build the same lineups I build because there's just so many other things.
Right. Or people that want my MMA model that isn't a model.
Right.
It's like to me, that's the thing that cracks me up. It's like my process isn't that scientific that you can't replicate it. And it's like, dude, I'm just trying to be directionally accurate. You need my dude, you can make this in 5 minutes. What am I?
Yeah. So someone, a subscriber one time tried to pay me $1,000 for my Excel model for some sport. And I told him no. I was like, I'm not like trying to hide it from you or something. I was like, I would actually feel bad selling this to you because I think it's the most important thing that I use, but by itself, it's literally useless. Like, it wouldn't help you unless you're doing all the other things that I do, in Fantasy Crunch or whatever. Like, it's the final step for me. It helps me a lot, but it's basically useless to anybody else. Right.
It's the numbers that I'm putting in that for what I'm doing on that specific slate. And it helps me be more efficient, but it's not predicting. It's not predictive. There's no prediction involved
Right.
It's just saying, okay, how do I identify who has a higher inside the distance in round one and all that type of stuff in comparison to what I believe the ownership's going to be, in comparison to the projection around the industry. So I know that, if I play a lot of this guy, I probably have to play a lot of that guy. Like that's all it's really doing for me.
I mean, mine chooses my lineups for me also.
Oh, it does. Does it do your laundry?
Yeah. But I mean, again, it doesn't build them for me. Like I don't have my own optimizer. It just, I have it set up to help me, decide what the best lineups are I can play in any given contest. But like, still got to put the good lineups into it for it to pick from. It's not going to be useful to someone that doesn't know how to use Fantasy Cruncher to build lineups.
Right, or any other type.
Yeah,
of
or any.
Right,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it is. And there are features that some people use and some people don't use. Like they're I don't know, in Fantasy Cruncher, is there a function for like having batters only in stacks?
No.
Or it's something that you don't even use then.
Yeah, so I might not use, like, there's the thing with Fantasy Cruncher, there's like a lot of ways you can do pretty much anything you want. Sometimes it's just you have to like be familiar enough with it to understand like the workaround to get there. I'm not sure, like, off the top of my head how I would do what you said though.
Right, like the fact of the matter is, like,
it would be like you'd have to go in and say, like, if Max Kepler, then at least two of Luis Arias and whoever.
Right, lineup HQ, you have to do groups, but it's a type of thing. Why would it be useful? Well, if you're playing playing twins in your pool, and you don't want to Drelton Simmons as a one-off in any of your lineups because what's his ceiling? Right, Nicky Lopez on the and that's what it's useful, and it makes it easy to just go click, and I don't have to worry about.
Yeah, or like one thing that I recently started doing, because I kind of had found I was having an issue getting, you mentioned, like, I think Daniel Lynch against the Astros yesterday. I was having an issue getting him even to get into Fantasy Cruncher lineups unless I really bumped his projection, in which case then he's getting into too many, and I know I'm going to get too much of him because of how contrarian he is and because I bumped his projection. So I've started, and like also if I bump his projection, then I'm going to get less Astros and all of that. But I did, like the other day, I was like, I bet I could do this, and it's worked really well. Just going in and saying, taking every hitter on the Astros and saying if less than one, then bump Daniel Lynch's projection by 25%.
Right.
Like doing stuff like that, works.
Right, but that's a magic setting. It's like, no, it accomplished the thing that you needed to do.
Right.
And that specific thing.
It's problem solving. You need to be familiar enough with your optimizer to when you say, oh wow, I like this is a problem. I wonder if I could solve it this way, to like know how to go do it.
Right. Just like last year, you complimented me. I always think people hate me. So like anytime that I get a compliment, I'm just like, okay.
Really
on the slant. What?
I said it's really unusual for me to compliment people.
Right. That's why I said on when I won the slant last year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like your comment, all going along with the optimizers of like, it looks a lineup that you would hand build because I did the leverage and the correlation between the run back. Of the tight end or whatever. It's like, those are all up. That's what I'm doing in the opt. I mean, because on lineup HQ, we don't have correlation boosts. So if I'm saying I want a 3+1 plus a 1+1 plus I want these three correlations. And then I set up groups to like, if this guy's in the lineup, I don't mind playing, the chalk, thing and then like, that's how I'd hand build it. Right. And also the 1v1 type of things where it's one guy on one side of the game. It's typically all players that are within, like, it's not for Devontae Adams. It's for like these guys are all projected in the same range. These are all $4,500 and wide receivers and $3,000. Like the example was like T. Higgins and Burton on that slate. It's like, dude, these are 3K tight ends and 4K wide receivers. Like the variance between any of these 4K wide receivers, 8 of them versus 6 of the tight ends, if they're all about equal. So if I'm going to play 2 of them, let at least them be in the same game. Like,
may as well have them together.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to play anyway, just get them together.
Right. So, I mean, but that's all done through optimizer groups and settings and all that for the lineups that I want to build. With a correlation boost, you could do the same thing, but it's not hard. Like, the difference is that you're making it more likely, but not 100% likely.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I think
I'll say, I always forget how I build NFL lineups until like I'm up the entire night before opening week. But I think I usually use correlation boosts, which again, it gives me more lineups like that, but not I want to say like I have 4 stacks. I definitely 4 stacks, but then I think I use correlation boosts on like the one the 1v1 like Bengals versus Bears secondary receivers or whatever.
Right, but you're not guaranteed to get it because it's
right. I'm not.
It's
right,
going to
yeah,
boost it up 10%, but it may not be. It might beat out the projection of some other player in the lineup during that run. Me, I without a correlation boost, I just have to just force it.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's the tilt in my head, doing it that way of seeing. I think at one slate, 2 years ago, like it was a lineup that won the Millie Maker, and I was playing the Millie Maker that I could have won.
Yeah.
But it was a lineup that I couldn't have made. Like you understand? Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? It's like it's the teams. It was the idea, but because I was it was. I think we had that slate with the Chiefs. I remember last year, everyone was running it back with like Denzel Mims or something.
Oh yeah,
right. It's like
what was it, Barrios?
Yeah, Barrios. But I mean, I don't think you might as well just not have run it back with anything.
Right.
Yeah, and if you forced yourself into a run back, you'd look at the winning lineup and go, it was a Chiefs 3-man stack and all a bunch of players that you played a ton of.
Yep.
But since you were forcing in a run back, you could have never possibly gotten that line.
Yeah. That's one thing that I tried to be better about. I think last year that I had always felt I struggled with was just going through the slate and finding spots where it's just like, okay, you really don't need a run back here. Like this team's going to get theirs regardless of if the other team scores. For example, the Chiefs and the Jets. That's something that like I started trying to be better about. I feel like it gives you somewhat of an edge if you're willing to like go game by game and at least think them through like that. But it's also like easy to screw up, so I'm always hesitant to do it also.
I get tilted I get my frustration. Maybe you could help me here with NBA. Since I consider you to be great in NBA.
Thank you.
There is negative correlation in NBA.
Yeah.
The problem is that like I make like when one person shoots, the other person can't shoot. Like if you have like multiple jump shooters on a team, like why would you be playing 3 of them?
Right.
But the problem is that sometimes all 3 of them do get there for their prices, and I end up making groups. Like I make groups in NBA for GPPs where it's like, well, if Carmelo Anthony is having a good game, it's like, well, whoever he's just hogging the ball, and I mean, like, how is Gary Trent going to have a good game also at 5K at the same? So I'm separating these guys out. Yet sometimes I see sharp players lineups, and it's the guard as well as like the guy that comes in for him at 3,800, which is still he could get there, but they're technically like their ceilings are negatively correlative. I'm grouping them out, yet a lot of people aren't.
The thing with NBA that I kind of struggle with and why I actually try not to make a ton of groups for NBA is that there's like you're saying there's negative correlation between like 2 high usage guys on the same team. But at the same time, if that game gets played at a faster pace than we're predicting, based on like the Vegas total, then there's positive correlation between them too, because there's just more possessions. It's a high scoring game. It goes to overtime, whatever. The other team is just playing horrible defense that day. Like there's other things that are going to positively correlate to where I normally view it. I group based on positions, obviously, like, or at least on most slates. Like there's obviously exceptions, but I group based on positions so that, I'm not playing like
backup centers with centers
or whatever.
Right. Like you wouldn't play like backup centers with starting centers.
Right, yeah, backup centers is the one that really, obviously stands out. And then also a lot of times I'll group by salary, but I also won't I won't X them out. Like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, I'll say like if 2 players from the same team over 8,500, then 1 player from the other team projected for at least 25 points is, I think, a good way to do it.
Right. What you're describing is kind of the mentality of what I do with groups with the with the run. Like I'm more likely to play if I play one guy from one side of the game, I'm going to play a guy from the other side of the game because they're going to be correlative as long as the pace and the total goes up. Right. But you're doing it with a correlation boost. Yeah. And I'm doing it with just straight up like conditional groupings of like
I do it with conditionals.
Okay.
So that I can't have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in the same lineup because they're on the same team and they're both expensive unless I have some guy from the other team, like basically the top scorer from the other team.
Right. Because you want all of them to hit their ceilings because
Right.
it goes to triple overtime.
If two 10K guys from the Clippers each score 55, 60 points, that doesn't really happen unless one of the top scorers on the other team has a big game as well.
Right. But for the cheaper players, you don't care as much about it.
Yeah, I don't care as much because it's just they can get there so many ways. Like, they get 4 more rebounds than normal. They don't have to score. They just, pick up rebounds or get steals or whatever. Like, it's just so much easier to pay off a cheap salary in random ways than an expensive salary. Like, the expensive guys kind of have to score at least to some level to pay off their salary, and there's obviously only so many baskets to go around.
But don't you think people get too focused? Because I listen to your shows, and I listen to Roto Grinders shows of the age-old question of who plays in a blowout.
Yeah.
Like, that's the outcome. I describe it as it's like you have to hit a 2-outer. You have to hit on both streets. It's like you're betting on the flop that you run perfect, because not only does the game have to blow out, but then the game has to blow out. That guy has to get, he normally plays 12 minutes and now he's playing 26 minutes. And then he also has to be efficient enough to put up a 40-point game in that scenario. That why are you worried about who plays in a blowout? You should just worry about who's going to do well in a close game.
Right, yeah. And also, if you're playing that blowout, that random blowout guy, you also need the actual starters ahead of him not to have done well enough in the 3/4 of blowing the other team out that you just need them anyway.
Right.
Because I'm assuming you're not playing both sides. You're not playing the starter and the backup. So, that's always, people get so caught up on that. It's just like, it's hard enough to win tournaments. You don't need to just make your life miserable on top of it.
Right. Showdown, I could understand.
Yeah.
Showdown makes sense.
If you want to build an entire lineup around the game script, like in a showdown format, that's one thing. But when you're talking a slate where you can just choose guys from another game, and where a blowout means that a team scored a lot of points in a hurry, and so guys are just typically performing at an above average rate, I don't understand it in like a full slate at all.
Do you play heavy in showdown formats?
I started playing cash a bit heavier last year. Especially during postseason. That went well, so I think I'll get back to doing more of that. I hadn't really before, but I think showdown formats in general, I kind of had learned last NFL season. I started playing a lot of just, like, I'll play one lineup and just play it in everything, and I feel like people make a lot of mistakes, and I've made pretty good money across showdown.
But you're not playing large field, you're not...
I mean, I throw it in there.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying you're not doing the thing of, like, oh, you're going to play the lineup that's the least duplicated... Like
I typically don't 150 max showdown.
Okay, so you do the exact. I play no cash in showdown.
It's surprisingly good.
Surprisingly, NFL or everything, even like NBA and
I mean,
MLB?
NFL's the best, but like NBA playoffs went really well for me. Because also it's like I said, I'll throw it in tournaments too. I win a surprising number of decent sized tournaments with just what I think is the best lineup. And sometimes it's duplicated a couple times. I had one big NFL slate last year where I just happened to have like a 1v1 receiver off of the cash lineup that everyone else played, and my guy came through. So like I just single-handedly took down tournaments, which is awesome. But yeah, like I've done well enough in tournaments with my cash lineup too, and then also just winning head-to-heads and stuff that there are some slates where you end up being really heavily duplicated, but there's a lot where I think people actually make mistakes.
I just find the showdown that those types of formats suit my brain more, where they're like, you don't want the bet. Like you almost like, oh, here,
right.
It's the age-old thing, especially in NFL with the large showdowns for Monday and Thursday night football, and you'll hear it on any show around the industry. In a showdown format, if you build your lineup and you're like, oh, I think this looks good, then it's horrible.
It's probably not.
Right.
Yeah.
It's probably hard. It's probably the worst. And I think people get too caught up. I know Colin Drewby.
Yeah. Drew.
Does a lot with the correlations.
Yep.
And I found it from looking at the CSVs that you have a higher expected value playing fucked up shit.
Yeah.
Like playing for chaos. But obviously, you're more likely to retain equity with the correlated ones.
Right.
So it's like, if you want to play the highest EV lineups, you're playing the lineups where you're playing 2 running backs from the same team. You're playing a wide receiver, the high-end wide receiver at the captain without his quarterback, right? You're fading the defenses
Right.
Sometimes
was when I because for NFL I'll play tournaments some just because the contests are so big, and that was one thing I found really quickly because I would go back and actually review those slates since I didn't really know what I was doing. And there was a lot of times it would be like, okay, cool, I gave myself zero chance of having the winning lineup tonight because of my rules. So I stopped setting a lot of rules for those tournaments real quick.
Right. My favorite thing is to do very similar to like baseball, stack against the most owned pitcher as long as they're not an ace. Is the game has a 38 total? Make lineups as if it's going to be a shootout.
Right.
And then when it's a 57 total, defense captain. Right. Like that. Like to me. But you said from a duplication standpoint, like you get so much more. I've run the lineups, and it's like you get so much more expected value. It happens so infrequently, but the fact that you can make 150 lineups and get like 78 uniques, playing lineups that don't even look that bad. It's not like you're playing the sixth guy wide receiver that gets 2 snaps, right?
Who still, by the way, is like 6% owned.
Right. Right, or you're not playing the fullback that you're hoping gets in the gets 6 points with a 1 yard dive. Like no, you could just play. Oh, the Patriots are on the slate. Play 2 of their running backs because everyone you're gonna hear everyone say like you should not play 2. Like play one of them, but they're gonna come in and out for each other. And which one, Burkhead or James White or Sony Michel or whoever the hell they got, Damian Harris. Oh, there's 4 of them active, which means you shouldn't play any of them. Now play 3 of them in your lineup.
Right. It's the same thing with NBA. Like rules that the 2 center rule in NBA. Like on a main slate, I'm not doing that. On a showdown slate, I think it's the right move a lot of the time.
Right. Which makes no sense to people because it logically it's like, well, they're negatively correlated. It's like, yeah, that also means that less people are going to do it.
And also, I mean, it's still a game of pricing. Like a lot of times, like using the NBA example. If you're going to get 48 minutes from 2 guys and one of them is $1,500 or something, that's still a good value, even if he's only playing like the reason you're not playing them together on a main slate is opportunity cost because you can roster centers from other teams. And like for that guy on the bench to have a big game, it comes at the expense of the starter. But when you're talking a 1-game slate, there's a lot of times that the guy who's playing 12 minutes off the bench is priced to play 12 minutes off the bench. So he's a perfectly fine play. You don't need extra. And
then you have to people also have to reconcile the fact of what format it's in. You're talking about GPPs. Right. In cash games, a lot of times it's optimal when Embiid is out to play $3,800 Dwight Howard with $3,200 Tony Bradley and just get all their center minutes. And then people would look at you and go, well, I thought they're negatively correlated. It's like, well, it's cash. You don't need a ceiling score.
Right. I just got 48 minutes for $6,800 or whatever.
Right. I think that's the jump that we're talking about from that 2014 era feel player to going up to the 2021 like math, game theory, strategy. It's not a complicated math. It's just kind of thinking non-linearly is all based around the fact that there's no black and white. There's just a lot of gray, and I call it the levers, right? As one lever goes up, another lever goes down. Right. And you're like, well, you shouldn't play 2 centers together, but you could because it actually increases your median, but it decreases your ceiling. But what contests should you prioritize median? Well, cash games. Which ones should you prioritize? Ceilings, GPPs. And then what people do is that they don't take that into it. They just look from a perspective of DFS is a game of predicting what's going to happen in tonight's games and not a game about beating other people. Right. And then they look at you and they get confused about, well, on one show you said to not play the center, right? Imagine doing an NBA showdown show for a main slate show and doing a cash GPP and showdown. You on that exact example of the 2 centers, you would say different things on each thing, and someone would listen and go, this guy's trying to cover all his bases. This guy's a fraud, right?
Yeah, exactly. Everything is like you said. It's a sliding scale. Everything's on a spectrum. It's if this is going to be the case, which we think it is, then this is a good play. But if this were actually the case, then it's not a good play, and you actually should do the opposite. Like everything is on a spectrum. Like I think the example that people used when I was like kind of learning was like Clayton Kershaw. You should understand that in most cases, Clayton Kershaw against a really bad team is a good play. But if you know for a fact he's going to be 99.5% owned, he's a terrible play. Like that should tell you that there is some spot where he goes from being good to bad. You just kind of have to figure out where that is.
Right. Where is the spot? Right.
Right.
Typically by teaching in extremes,
Right.
it helps people get that a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you were playing a 100-man contest and you were the only one without Clayton Kershaw, what needs to happen for you to win? Him to fail, and you win. It doesn't even matter what the rest of your lineup. Your lineup is one pitcher. Like, we even decrease it. All you have to do is select a pitcher on the slate, right? Clayton Kershaw is in 99% of lineups. Shane Bieber is in your lineup. Even if you think Kershaw is a bit like he's not going to win 99% of the time, and especially if 99 people have the same lineup, right? Now it doesn't even matter at that point.
Right. Yeah. It's just. There are so many. To me, that's like one of the easiest ways to actually think about probability, because I know that's something that's just a lot of people struggle with, is, like, that things are really, even if something's likely to happen, it's still not going to happen a lot. But it's just to, like, think in terms of extremes, like you said, even if you know it's not a practical example, if you can get to a situation where you say, oh, well, I wouldn't do this if that was the case, that tells you there is some spot where you wouldn't want to do what you think is the quote unquote, like, best play or best thing to do.
Right, it's those probability things. Like, I had someone the other day complain to me. I looked, and this is Slate. We have Slate IQ, which is the top stacks tool. It's a similar type of thing. I've looked at Slate IQ every day this week, and I played the top stack, and the top stack didn't win. Like, in the entire week, and I'm like, what percent yesterday was the Houston Astros to win? They were the top stack at 9%. I said, so 91% of the time they're not the top stack.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are you complaining about? Like, okay, you looked at an entire week that the top stack at most, a lot of times, sometimes we'll get a 20. Sometimes.
Right. In which case, like, yeah, they're twice as likely as the next highest team, and they're still 80% to fail.
Right. So, like, but to me, that's the probability.
Yeah.
Probably, like, and then finally he said, it's like, oh, now that you put it that way, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't, like, I didn't think of it in terms of they're at 91% not to. It's like,
right.
Yeah,
you flip it. And yeah, like Josh made that point this morning. 'Cause I think we were talking about, like, the Blue Jays or something. And someone said that, like, the Blue Jays have been failing a lot lately or something. And Josh is like, at whatever their top stack percentage is, like, you literally have to play this slate for a month before you think before they actually would, like, be expected to hit to win the slate, because it's like 1 in 30 or whatever.
Right. I made the example because someone, I was trying to help someone that was building a lot of lineups and not succeeding over a long period of time. And I said to him facetiously, this is why I'm an asshole. I said it could be it's possible that you're the greatest DFS player of all time. And he goes, what do you mean? I said how long have you been on this losing streak? He goes, the whole MLB season. I said, okay, it's quite possible you're the greatest MLB DFS player ever. And he goes, I don't understand, but I'm not winning. I said, you're right, but it's possible that the greatest DFS player of all time could lose for 4 months straight. Right. So it's like, just saying that you're losing doesn't help me. Like you have to understand how much variance there actually is. And I put things into perspective because he's only playing large field GPPs. And I'm like, if you could build I gave him an example. If you could build one lineup that is definitively the highest EV lineup that you could possibly build for this contest, and I say that it's 2x your entry fee. So you put in $1 and you get back 2, which I'm not even sure if those lineups even exist. So right, most of the time maybe you get to like $1.50, $1.60 maybe. More in Showdown because of the duplication. But I say, okay, these lineups don't even exist, and they're 2x your entry fee on average over $1 million whatever. I said it's a 50,000 entry fee contest. Okay, so this lineup has twice as more shot to win than, and let's say all the other lineups are 1. I just like make it easy. It's twice as more likely to win than every one in the lineup. That means you'll win once in 25,000 slates. I said, okay, so if you were to play the highest expected line, both single one in every day, said you'll win a GPP like maybe before the time you're dead.
Right, exactly.
Like maybe, and that may not even happen, right? The variance, right? So let's say you play 150 of those. Okay, now you've reduced it to you'll win 1 in like 6 months.
Right.
Right? So you could be building those lineups, and like you're probably not to that extent. So Now we bring it down to more normal $1.30, $1.20 type of EV type of lineups. You're playing 50,000 entry fee contests. Your lineups are only, the big edge is having a lineup that's 20% better than the fields.
Right.
Right? And you're like, well, why am I unprofitable? It's like maybe this is the main reason. Lastly, do you agree with me? I think you're more transparent than most. I consider myself the most transparent, but
yes, I think you probably are.
Right, but more transparent than most. Don't you think that? This is the main reason why I am. That it's more helpful if your job is to help people. If you're a good player that doesn't care about content and doesn't care about helping people, fuck. If Brian Hooper doesn't want to show his fucking roto tracker, that's fine. If Mock Lovin does, like, no, if they don't want to share their edge at all, that's what they should be doing, right? But if you are, wouldn't it be more helpful to show a realistic point of variance and downswings and those types of concepts through roto tracker charts, through those types of results? Yeah, you could the screenshots, they're obviously screenshots work. They're good for marketing.
Right.
Feel free to beat your chest when you win a GPP. Feel free to post your ironic ones where you lose all your money, right? Like that's just the lulls of Twitter.
Right.
But don't you think people would have less, like they would get these concepts a little bit better if more sharper players would share their, like, look, I play 150 entries. I know you've seen me win 2 GPPs, but I'm down on the year.
Right.
That like they would start to grasp these concepts a little bit more than thinking that you won $116,000 in MMA. It's like, dude, I spent $22,000 on a downswing trying to get to that point.
Right.
Like they think that I didn't put any money in for that.
Yeah, and that's one of those. I mean, even as someone who obviously understands the swings at this point, it's still, I think, helpful for me when I see players that I think are really, really good. Post theirs. Like I know Frankie Bourne posted his. I think at some point last football season where he had just won a big tournament, but it was at the back end of like some obscene downswing. And like I've always just found it good for me, like, because one, it reinforces that it's not just you, like everyone's going, everybody has them, but like it reinforces, because it's really easy. It's so easy when like you're losing to get caught up in like you're the only person losing when obviously you're not. But like, yeah, so even from like a not only a this is just how it works thing, but like a everyone, even the really good players, go through these huge swings that seem like they're not going to end.
Right, but wouldn't you get more realistic like questions as far as, I mean, there's still some people, maybe not as much now as there were back in 2017. I mean, I still get YouTube comments or whatever, because there's trolls everywhere, right?
Right, sure.
It's have you ever won the Millie Maker? And I go, no. I said, so why should we listen to you? Like, dude, like Alex never won the Millie Maker. I mean, like if that's your like, oh, only good players win the Millie, like that's someone that just has no realistic like thing of what it is, like what anything like how am I supposed to teach you if you don't understand that? Oh, why? They'll ask me, why don't I play the Millie Maker? So because it's a fucking donkey negative EV contest.
Right. Yeah, if I had like unlimited money and didn't have to contest select at all, then yeah, sure, because it's like it's the softest tournament, but like I'm not gonna win it. I'd probably live like 5 lives before I win it.
But I mean, my aim is to teach people. But dude, the last thing is, do you believe showing all of this? Like, are you on my side on? You're very transparent on the strategy show. You say what you think. I mean, there's nothing you say that you're saying to deceive people. There's nothing that I'm saying to deceive people. I'll get on shows before lock and say, here, this is exactly what I'm doing, right? I'm playing more of this and more of that and whatever. Let's see if it works out. Do you believe that even though you're pretty much teaching people how to play well, that 95% of people are just not going to do it anyway? So there's no that you're not on the brick 75 camp of like he's on the middle ground of he thinks 95% of people aren't going to do it, but he's afraid of the 5% of people that are going to do and then end up in the high stakes contests with him. But there are also some people some sharper players that are like, I don't like the fact that anyone's talking about this stuff, and I think these guys should shut up.
I think I'm kind of similar to brick, like, to me, I talked about it on Twitter kind of briefly with damn it, who was it? I don't remember. One of the high stakes guys that I can't believe I'm drawing a blank, but who like just hates that anyone does it. And I was like,
probably Ricky D.
It was, yeah,
Right.
that's what it was. And I mean, it wasn't like there wasn't animosity or anything. We were kind of just talking about it, and I was just like, for me, for one, I agree that I think 95% of people just are not gonna. It's not gonna matter. And yeah, there is some percentage that probably is, doing like what I did. Like I said before, I picked up stuff from Draft Cheat and Hefe back in the day and made it my own and got a lot better really quickly. There's definitely, I think, people that are doing that. But for me, I get paid enough to supplement my downswings and not have to worry about money that it's worth it to me. Like, I think, DFS is going to turn into something else. Sports betting is the answer, but this economy is
I think it's going to turn into DFS style sports betting content.
That's exactly what I think also. But I think that, like, I don't think we're going to have like this iteration of DFS for the rest of my life. And if I do this for 10 years, I'm going to have taught so many people to be good at DFS that I can't make money at DFS or something. That's not going to happen. I think it's more in my interest right now, because I'm not independently wealthy, that I'm paid enough. I don't have to cover expenses from DFS. I don't have to worry about those downswings. I've played DFS without any secondary income, and I hated it. It was just miserable for me. So to me, like I said, the conversation was with Ricky. I said to Ricky, I was like, yeah, if I win the Millie Maker, or maybe two, I would stop doing this probably pretty quickly. But right now, for me, just risk reward standpoint, it makes sense for me to give a little bit to that 5% in exchange for not having to worry about money at all.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing for me. I mean, the money that I make from doing content on Roto Grinders and obviously selling the course that I have, like, that pays all my bills.
Right.
Like, so, like, all the profit from DFS just gets added to my bankroll and added to my bankroll, and I'm going to be doing the stuff that I do. I'm going to be doing anyway. I mean, like, it's like you're doing a show before lock because you're doing it. I mean, like it's not, exactly. All you're doing is doing it in front of a camera and talking about it.
All I'm doing is putting into words what I would be doing anyway. So it's to me. Raven one time posted some, and me and him are friends. He posted something like tongue in cheek about, like why touts would do whatever. And I just DM'd him and I was just like, if I paid you to do 2 hours of, to talk through your work 2 hours, every day, and I paid you X amount, how quickly would you do it? And he's just like, oh yeah, I would take it. Right. So like, it's to me, it's just kind of,
and it's not that much money. And to make it clear, it's really not that much money.
Yeah. I mean, it's enough, but I wouldn't do it for like, I wouldn't do it for what I used to get paid, when I first started out. But it's enough.
Is that a shot at someone? What I used to get paid?
Ask Eric. Yeah, Eric was my first quote unquote employer in the industry.
But add more funds?
Yeah, Eric Bimfor, yeah.
Yeah.
It was called Slurve back in like 2015.
Oh, yeah, he probably played nothing, right? How much could he have paid?
Yeah. And I had equity in his startup. I think he paid me like $300 once because he felt bad. But I went from there to FanVice and stuff. So I mean, yeah, like for me, there's just like anything else. There's a sliding scale. Right now, it makes sense for me to do what I'm doing. I think that I am more than compensated for whatever edge I'm giving up.
Do you believe that, like, the reason why I don't, like, I respect your content is because, like, I see that, like, I know that you're playing more in DFS than you get paid.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the scale, like, to me, there's a difference between, imagine you're making $2,000 a month doing content and playing $5 a slate. Right. To me, that's much different than getting paid $2,000 to do a content when you're playing $5,000 to $10,000 a day. Like, where the content isn't the main income, it's DFS. It's just the recurring space underneath. I don't, because there are a lot of people that have that mentality of, like, because we see this debate come up like once a month on Twitter about can you provide content without, like, having skin in the game? And to me, for DFS as a game perspective, my answer is no.
It's the way I view it is I think you can. Like I think during that stretch in 2017, 2018 where I was playing really poorly, I think I was actually doing the best content work that I probably had done just from like understanding. Like I wasn't building good lineups, but I was like conceptually I understood what I should be doing. I just couldn't figure out how to do it. Like I think my content was actually really good, but the way I look at it is, and again, like I was still playing, I just wasn't winning. But the way I look at it is, you can still, especially from like an analysis standpoint, I think if you don't have skin in the game, you still could provide useful information. You kind of have to prove it to me though. Like if you're someone that I know plays at a high level, and then you start doing content, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that you know what you're talking about. If you're someone that doesn't play, I'm going to assume that you're full of shit, basically, unless you really prove to me that like what you're saying makes sense. And, it definitely makes sense with, how strategy works and all of that. I think that's a pretty high bar. I don't think many people do it. I think it's possible, though. It's
possible. I don't think anyone does that. I'm talking about the analysis that's what I call the explaining the projections analysis. Like it's
right.
quite like Evan Silva's matchups column. I'm not saying he doesn't know what he's talking about, but no offense, but that's not DFS analysis. Like that's
right. Like
you're giving
like
me snap kind of counts. You're giving me information that I could be utilizing for my DFS play, but you're not giving me DFS advice.
Right.
I don't consider that type of if you want to. I have no problem. I listen to MMA podcasts and read MMA stuff, and they explain how the fighters fight or whatever. Like, that has nothing to do with my process of how to make lineups. But, like, if I wanted to know how these fighters fight, like, you're providing me with very valuable stuff. It doesn't help me in DFS, though.
Right. Yeah. I'm with you there. Like, I'll pull some stuff, like, from the matchups article or something. I'll be like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I'm not really sure that like maybe I should bump this guy's projection a little bit just because I'm not sure that anybody's really paying attention to this. Like, I'll pull stuff like that. But yeah, if you're someone giving actual like DFS strategy, like, this is how you should be approaching things, blah, 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 it's really hard to make the case that you can do that at a high level if you're not playing, because why wouldn't you be playing?
Right, because you'd be doing exactly what you're saying.
Right.
Like that.
Like there's still so much money to be made in DFS. Nobody's giving up DFS to like do content.
Not any good player.
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'd be shocked.
Unless if 5,000 more people want to buy my course this year, maybe I've said that before. Adam, in DMs, sometimes you get the random people that are like, can you build my lineups? Can you give me a lineup type of thing that they don't even know what I do? They just saw I won something and whatever.
Right.
And what my response is? I'm an asshole. I'm sarcastic. I said, if you pay me $75,000, I'll give you all my lineups.
Right. Yeah. That's
my goal every year is to just make $75,000. So it's like, dude, if I don't have to have any risk and get $75,000, I will make you. And they look at me and like, yeah, but this other guy charges $10 a month. I'm like, yeah, because they're bad players. Like, no one worth their shit would be doing that.
Yeah, people DM me for DFS coaching, and I'm just like, honestly, the amount of money you would need to pay me to get me to talk about DFS any more than I have to is just not worth it for you. I'd be ripping you off. Like,
right, same thing for me. It's like, dude, I'm on every day. Like,
right.
if you can't learn by that, what do you need a private coach for?
Right.
There's nothing that I would tell you that's any different.
Yeah, exactly.
ShipMyMoney DFS on Twitter. I'll eventually give you shit about buying a penguin.
Yeah, I'm already kind of regretting that.
Apparently,
it's so out of my element.
Did you buy the pudgy one, or there's another?
Yeah, I bought the pudgy one.
My stance on all this shit. I got none of this.
It's FOMO. 100%.
Yeah, but at least at least admit that. If everyone on Twitter just said, this is one big Ponzi scheme, let's all get in and pump and dump and get out and have someone else hold the bag. It's fun to do that. Let's do it.
I buy into the fact that like stuff will be valuable. A lot of the stuff or some of the stuff will be valuable in the future and all that. I don't know anything about really what I'm looking at. This particular purchase was 100% FOMO for me. When punks were 40K I looked at them and I was just like, no way, not doing that. And then now they're like 200. When apes were like 10K or whatever, I was just like, I'm not doing that. And now they went up a ton. And this time I was like, whatever, screw it.
Yeah,
If
but
I
that's
lose
all
10K,
short term.
What'd you say?
That's all short term. Are you going to hold on to when you bought the Penguin? Did you think of I'm not going I'm the minimum amount of time for me to sell this isn't until 20 years?
No.
Right, so then people shouldn't act like that. Then
if I hold it for 20 years, I think like whatever, that's fine. The way I look at it is that I'm holding my Ethereum in a more volatile asset.
Okay, you're doing a derivative. I'm just laughing at that. I'm talking to Davis in February. He buys a Tyler Hero, saying that it's a good long-term investment, and his version of long-term is 3 months. I'm like,
oh right, yeah,
then it's not long-term. Then it's like flip it as high as you can and get the fuck out, which is fine. But then just say that.
And that's the thing that for me is difficult with these two. I bought the first real NFT I bought was Robert Gronkowski. I bought it, I don't know, a few weeks ago. For like, I saw someone tweet that, and he tweeted that he thought they'd be really valuable in like 4 or 5 years because they were like the first real athlete NFT. And I was like, okay, that makes sense to me. It was like 0.5 ETH, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll just buy that and forget that I have it. So I bought a couple, and then it like went on a run where it like 4x'd in value. And so I actually sold mine last night for like 4x over the course of like 3 weeks. And so it was just like I had actually bought that intending to kind of just forget that I had it. But then it got to a point where it's just like, wait, I can just really quickly like subsidize everything else that I'm buying. I basically was like, wait, I can just buy a Penguin now with my
but that's a different game. So if you want to treat it as a game, that's fine.
Right.
Like my attitude is not I'm not against the game. I'm against the deception. I'm against when Top Shots started up, right, and Bales' post and people aped into that shit. It's like I acknowledge that I could sit around for drops and I could buy stuff from the marketplace and flip my bags over to someone else and get a 10x return like that. But there's a percentage of time that I'm going to be stuck because I'm not going to get out in time. There's an opportunity cost of my time. Yeah, and I tend to be the person that likes to do things like I'm going to be all in or all out.
Right.
And I'm like, so if I'm going to be doing this, that means I'm most likely not going to be playing NBA DFS tonight. And I'm like, I'd rather be playing NBA. So it's like, and if you guys make money in 2 months and some people flip shit for 10x, like what does that have? I still got my fucking stock portfolio that's up 18% on the year. So like, what? Feel free to get rich quick, right now, and I'll see you in 20 years. Have fun.
Everything goes up right now. So like the opportunity cost for like so much stuff like that ended up kind of being the biggest thing. Like I made money in Top Shot, but realistically, I played about as poorly as you could in Top Shot, and still made money. But it was just like, I probably would have made more money if I just like dumped this into Ethereum and held it instead of.
Well, I view it the same with the stock market. Like it's hard for me to reconcile the fact that people are like, well, you pick up this Top Shot and you pick up this NFT, you go on OpenSea, you go into your MetaMask and your Coinbase and your whatever like that. And it's like, dude, like all these assets are all correlative to one another, which is also correlative to the stock market. So like, dude, I could just buy SPY and just do literally nothing and get the same, maybe not as much of a ceiling because there's more volatility in crypto. But it's like, why am I ever going to argue with like? I don't see how anyone could argue with 7 to 10% annualized returns.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
for doing like the best advice that people give you for investing is you put your money in DCA as money in every month, everything like that, and then forget the password to your account, and then wake up when you're retired. And
and I think obviously when you look at the demographic, at least on Twitter, that's into NFTs too. It's a bunch of 30-year-old guys that love to gamble. Like we're embracing that. We're just getting really volatile stocks.
But then say it's gambling. It's gambling. This ain't the future. The ape avatar.
I think technology-wise it is. I don't know I have no idea what the winners are.
Right. No, I agree with that. I told Davis. I said I think the blockchain succeeds. I just think that the dollar is going to be on the blockchain, not Bitcoin.
Oh no, I mean I don't know. I don't know enough about it to have like strong takes, but I think that. And NFT wise, like I think like entertainment wise, something comes out of this where like it's the future, and I'll think it's stupid. I'll think it's stupid, but
right. I'm not that much older than you, right?
Probably like 10 years.
10 years, right? But I mean, I've seen that, right? Well, Pokemon cards. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Magic the Gathering was big. I mean, people still
It's still
play
big.
it.
Yeah.
Right. MMA. I sold MMA, the MMO, the World of Warcraft, Team Fortress hats and Team Fortress.
Yeah.
They were the big, right? We had Second Life. Where the fuck is all of that now? The swords that I was selling for $50-$75 are worth like nothing now. Like what is it?
Yeah.
But that was
you might be like 15, 20 years older than me.
I'm about 42 years old.
Okay, you're 12 years older.
Okay. So
no, God damn, you're only 11 years older. I forgot how old I am.
People think I'm older than I am, I guess.
I'll say you could have told me anywhere from like 35 to 50, and I would have said, yeah, okay.
Okay, so if you want to make fun of Adam's penguin, are you changing your avatar?
No.
Why not? You have to change your avatar. It's required.
No, I'm not giving in on that.
You put yourself with the avatar, like kind of.
No, Avatar's not changing.
No, what someone wanted me to do, I talked to Mangone. He wants me to change my avatar to an NFT
Yeah.
Especially since I say that I'm never going to buy any of these things, just to see what the reaction's going to be.
I texted one of my good friends because I told him I'd been thinking about buying a car, and then I texted him. I was like, instead of the new Lexus, I bought this, and he screenshotted it and replies. He goes, I now also own this, and like it was a picture of my penguin.
Right. Oh, it cost. Oh, so basically, your penguin costs as much as a car.
It was a down payment.
And that's your first, like, when you go in, you're just like, at least Overzet is like, I'll just buy a fifth of something.
Yeah, no, that wasn't my first NFT. That was my biggest purchase. So
but why? Why that? Why the Pudgy Penguin?
Smart people have it. Yeah, no, previously my biggest purchase, I'd spent like $9K on a Giannis Top Shot. This was like $11K.
To most people, we sound very privileged.
Yeah.
Right. You bought the $20,000 worth of fake shit, right? Instead of a car.
Yeah. I live in the city. What do I need a car for?
Yeah. Well, you need a car. Who cares? So ShipMyMoney DFS. You can find all of his stuff at awesomeo.com. And as always, the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports 15-hour audio DFS masterclass at theoryofdfs.com.